Chapter 236. After 2 days of trekking, the group finally arrived at Yangsha County. But the sun was already setting at this time. So, the group found a small inn to stay in. When the carriage entered the city, Chu Qingyan felt that this place was very similar to the Wuzhen town she had been to before. There were simple houses, a long blue stone road, a small bridge overflowing water, and an arch bridge that seemed to have some history. The citizens that came and went had a satisfied smile on their faces. They weren't in a hurry as they walked, as if they were taking a leisurely stroll. In the distance, the tall mountains reached into the clouds and were surrounded by light smoke. It had just rained, so no matter how far or near, the sky was as clean as if it had been washed. Everything was so comfortable, as if they had returned to a peaceful environment. After learning that they would only stay for 1 night and would leave tomorrow to find that junior sister Ethereal, Chu Qingyan suddenly had an idea. That was to go for a night trip. So after everyone finished eating dinner, Chu Qingyan suggested that they go out to play tonight. Only Lve was responsible for taking care of the rooms, Qing was responsible for washing and feeding the horses, and Huang was responsible for replenishing the food. There was no need to mention Hualing and the others. They felt that things like going shopping were not suitable for men like them. When Chu Qingyan's eyes fell onto Luo Qinghui's people, her eyes were filled with expectation. But he shook his head. He needed to draft a memorial to the capital city tonight. In the end, Chu Qingyan could only bring her trusted maidservant, Xining, and her new personal bodyguard, Jin Exin. After Xiao Su helped her fix the fox fur coat around her neck and gave a few instructions, she left alone. Everyone had their own things to do, and it was like she was just a freeloader. She felt a bit defeated. But didn't she want to be a freeloader? A cool breeze blew over and it seemed to blow away the depression in her heart, making her feel much lighter. She didn't care. Since she was already out, she might as well play. After walking for a while, Chu Qingyan could clearly feel that Jin Xian's footsteps were much lighter than before. She knew that this was the result of Hualing and the others training him. However, she didn't know that Hualing and the others were actually training Jin Xian with the idea of taking revenge. After all, if it wasn't for Jin Xian's appearance, the ones protecting her would still be Hualing and the others. Just that, as the proud, fierce cavalry, they would never admit that they were jealous of a weak young man of unknown origins. Not long after they left the inn, Chu Qingyan felt that this county town gave her the same feeling as Wu Town, especially when all the lanterns were hung up. The dim yellow light reflected on the crystal-clear river, sparkling and dazzling. This was the real night. Shi Ning and Jin Exin walked behind their master, who seemed to have escaped from the birdcage. They were almost unable to catch up with her pace. In the alleyway, a lamp was slowly burning. A beautiful and graceful figure slowly walked out from the darkness towards the alleyway. She was leisurely strolling, not being disturbed by the bustling scene. As she walked closer, the light slowly illuminated her figure. She was wearing a simple green cloth skirt with a black belt around her slender waist. She was wearing a plain cotton jacket. She had a white and straight neck and delicate chin. Looking up, she had rose-colored lips and a straight nose. Looking up, she had a pair of clear autumn eyes. 3,000 strands of hair hung on both sides of her head, braided into a whip. At the end, there were 2 pink seashells tied together. As the wind blew, it made a crisp sound that was a bit playful. On her forehead, there was a rose-colored teardrop-shaped gem with a silver chain hidden in her black hair. Her entire person was standing under the light of the fire. She was exceptionally beautiful and beautiful like a hibiscus. Her expression was a bit casual, just like her current mood, absent-minded. So when Chu Qingyan turned around to urge the 2 people behind her, one was careless and the other was not paying attention. The 2 of them bumped into each other. Chu Qingyan was small in stature and her physique was not big. She was almost sent flying. Fortunately, that person reacted quickly and grabbed her shoulder, preventing her from having intimate contact with the ground. After Chu Qingyan stood firm, she looked at the person in front of her and her eyes were suddenly filled with amazement. Her face was like the full moon, her lips were like red lotuses, her eyes were like autumn water, and her eyebrows were like distant mountains. This woman was really born with good looks. I say, little sister, why aren't you staying at home in the middle of the night? Why are you strolling around? Be careful not to be abducted by bad people. Although it is said that no one picks up lost things here, it's hard to say that there aren't any lecherous people. Before he could regain his senses from this beauty, a scolding came crashing down on him. Chu Qingyan pointed behind her in a daze. I didn't come out alone. I brought a servant with me. Also, how did you know that I'm a woman? She was obviously wearing men's clothing, okay? Could it be that this big sister had discerning eyes? The beautiful woman looked at the young man and young woman behind her and held her forehead. Your family's adults are really at ease with the three of you going out. Forget it, seeing that you're not stupid, this big sister will not care about you. After saying that, she remembered her second question. The beautiful woman pointed behind her. This big sister is a doctor. When I touched your pulse, of course I can tell your gender. Alright, this big sister still has things to do. You can stroll around by yourself. After saying that, the beautiful woman passed by her. At this time, Chu Qingyan discovered that she was carrying a bamboo basket on her back. There seemed to be some medicinal herbs in it. And just now, she had indeed grabbed her wrist. Perhaps it was at that time that she felt her pulse. However, as Chu Qingyan looked at the back view of the man who was dressed in plain clothes but had an extraordinary figure, she clicked her tongue. Could it be that although Xiao County looked gentle and beautiful, the people it raised were all so straightforward? However, this big sister was graceful and did not feel the slightest bit arrogant. The way she spoke was also pleasing to the eye. Chu Qingyan could not help but want to follow her. Since they were fated to meet, why not make friends? It would not be a waste of this chance encounter in the hazy night. Xining and Jean Xen looked at each other. Did they feel that their master was like a playboy who wanted to hit on a good woman? The two of them nodded heavily. However, Chu Qingyan had only taken a few steps when two people came running from behind her. They went past her and ran towards the beautiful woman. Senior sister, the patient's condition in the East City has worsened. We are all helpless. You should go and take a look. Only to hear a man anxiously say, Don't dawdle. Quickly take me there. The beautiful woman's face was serious as she hurriedly left with the two people. Chu Qingyan was left alone. Just as she reached out her hand, she watched as the other person's clothes brushed past her fingers and left. Master, there are plenty of fish in the sea. Why do you only love one flower? Let's go back. It's getting late. Otherwise, the eldest young master will send someone to find us. Xining looked at her somewhat distracted master and could not help but advise. Jean Xian looked around. He could feel that Xiao Su's hidden guards had already arrived. Chu Qingyan withdrew her hand. Her face was filled with black lines. The feeling of being misunderstood as a love-struck fool was a headache. She just felt that it was rare to meet such a straightforward and unpretentious person in this different world. It would be a wonderful thing to be able to make friends with her. Unfortunately, the heavens were not on her side. She left just like that. She would leave Yangsha tomorrow. She did not know if she would have a chance to see her again. However, the words woman, bamboo basket, medicinal herbs, and doctor. These words made her mind flash. She looked in the direction the woman disappeared. Did she miss something? Chapter 237. Mistress, he's already gone far away. You won't be able to see him no matter how hard you look. Xining waved her hand in front of her face. Chu Qingyan finally regained her senses. That beautiful figure had already disappeared from that alley. Her heart felt strange. Forget it, let's not bother about it. Let's go back. Chu Qingyan had just opened her mouth when she saw something flash in the corner of her eye. When she opened her eyes wide to take a closer look, she was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. Why was he here? Mistress, what did you just say? Xining didn't understand why her mistress looked as if she had seen a ghost halfway through her sentence. Chu Qingyan glanced at the flickering corner and suddenly said, Jean Xen, take Xining to the tea house in front and wait for me. Jean Xen looked up at her with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Cover me. Chu Qingyan whispered as she passed by him. Although he didn't understand why his mistress would suddenly make such a decision, Jean Xian still complied. With that, Chu Qingyan flew away. Xining was shocked. Where is mistress going? Don't ask too much. Let's go to the tea house first. Jean Xen glanced in the direction Chu Qingyan left and pulled Xining back. At this moment, Chu Qingyan had just arrived at the corner where that person had appeared. Unfortunately, that person had already taken a step ahead. She frowned and immediately followed. That person walked and stopped, strolling leisurely, as if waiting for her. But when she arrived, he quickly distanced himself from her. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. Was this person teasing her? In the end, Chu Qingyan stopped and pretended to walk back. That person saw this and laughed lowly. He landed on a big tree and turned around to wave at her. It's just a short distance and you're already impatient? Chu Qingyan gave him a sideways glance. Who teases people like you? The person in front of him was dressed in a dark purple robe. He had a devilishly handsome face and a sly smile. Who else could it be but Higashio Motetsu? Good. Come here. Are you afraid that this young master will eat you? Higashio Motetsu sat on the tree and waved at her. Chu Qingyan glared at him and leaped up the tree as well. He was obviously elegant and delicate, but he always liked to do things that did not match his elegance, such as sitting anywhere and everywhere. However, his carefree personality was really hard to dislike. Why you here? Chu Qingyan asked. This was the first thought that popped into her mind when she saw him. If you can be here, why can't I be here? Moreover, he leaned over and said in a charming voice, being able to meet me, shouldn't you be overjoyed? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. All right, the road leads to the sky. You can go wherever you want. I don't care. Seeing that she automatically ignored his second question, Higashio Motetsu was not annoyed. He put his hands behind his head and leaned against the tree. An ambiguous smile filled his eyes. Little girl, we haven't seen each other for a few months. Did you miss this young master? Chu Qingyan yawned. If you didn't appear, I would have completely forgotten about you. Higashio Motetsu smiled. Then it looks like this young master will have to appear in front of you more often in the future. Chu Qingyan suddenly became vigilant. What do you mean by that? The place you are going to, coincidentally, this young master is also going there. Higashio Motetsu saw the hair all over her body standing up and felt that it was fun, so he decided to tease her. She wanted to ask more, but seeing the sly look on his face, Chu Qingyan gave up. This person was probably teasing her again. All right, as you wish. Ever since she felt that this person did not have any ill intentions towards her, Chu Qingyan let down her guard against him. In any case, in this world, it was always better to have one more friend than one more enemy. He was a bit unaccustomed to the little girl not finding trouble with him. He thought for a moment and asked, You have become the King of England's princess consort at such a young age. How do you feel about it? Chu Qingyan turned her head and looked at him in surprise. How do you know that I am the King of England's princess consort? She immediately thought back to the few times she had met him in the past. She did not seem to have revealed her identity, nor did she leave any loopholes. How did this person know? Higashio Motetsu saw that the little girl had taken a step away from him because of his words. She looked at him warily and raised her eyebrows slightly, looking very elegant. Why do you look like you have seen a ghost? The King of England and his wife stirred up a storm in Pingyang City. Do you think that you can keep it under wraps? Don't you know that the entire Sichuan is singing your praises? It's hard for me not to hear about it all the way here. Chu Qingyan was still suspicious. Rumors are rumors, but how do you know that it's me? Higashio Motetsu glanced at her with a hint of contempt. Do you think that I don't have eyes? The King of England and his entourage had just left Pingyang City, and you arrived at the ocean right after. The timing is almost the same. Moreover, aren't you from the capital as well? Little girl, I'm not stupid. You don't have to think of ways to fool me. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she instantly stopped the thoughts in her mind. Anyway, if he had followed them all the way, he would have found out sooner or later. However, what she didn't understand was why he wanted to follow them. From what he said, he must have chased them all the way here from Pingyang City. Higashio Motetsu knew that the little girl was suspicious because of his words. However, he would have to appear in front of her sooner or later, and there was no reason to hide his whereabouts. That was why he appeared today when she was alone. Dong Ting, what's your motive? Chu Qingyan didn't smile at him. Instead, she asked him seriously. Higashio Motetsu touched his chin. Dongting? It's quite refreshing for you to call me that. I'll allow you to call me that. Chu Qingyan sighed. Don't change the topic. I'm not changing the topic. What motive could I have? Having no motive was the best motive, wasn't it? Higashio Motetsu smiled meaningfully. Chu Qingyan knew that she wouldn't get an answer even if she continued to ask, so she simply ignored him. Anyway, the fox's tail would be revealed sooner or later. She would know after some time. Forget it. Higashio Motetsu didn't expect that the little girl would give up on her interrogation so quickly. He was a little puzzled. Sometimes he felt that this little girl was mischievous, but sometimes she was terrifyingly smart. She knew that he had a problem, but she didn't insist on getting to the bottom of it. She was really an interesting girl. However, although she gave up on her interrogation, he didn't give up on his curiosity about her. Hey, you haven't answered me. What do you think about being the little princess consort? Faced with this evildoer's perseverance, Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes again. What can I think? It's just like that. Also, we're friends, but we can't pry into each other's privacy. This is called mutual respect, young Master Dongting. In the face of the little girl's righteous warning, he never took it seriously. Instead, he continued, the King of England is cruel and ruthless. He's not a good match for you. It's better for you to leave him as soon as possible. Don't say that I didn't persuade you as a friend. The palace fights are as deep as the sea. Your King of England has probably caused a lot of trouble. What did you say? Chu Qingyan's face suddenly became serious. Chapter 238. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her, feeling a little upset. Why are you so nervous? Chu Qingyan automatically ignored his words and asked anxiously, tell me clearly, what do you mean by getting into big trouble? What big trouble? Higashio Motetsu regretted his quick mouth after being spat at by the person in front of him. Okay, I'll tell you. Move your claws away first. Higashio Motetsu pointed at her claws that were tugging at his collar. If he didn't let go, he would be strangled to death by her. Chu Qingyan let go when she heard this. Hurry up and tell me. Higashio Motetsu tidied his clothes and said slowly, do you think that the capital doesn't know about the commotion that you've caused in Pingyang City this time? Do you think that Xiao Su is only targeting Lu Ying's residence? He shook his head and sneered. Xiao Su isn't just revamping Pingyang City this time. He's using Pingyang City as a catalyst to cut off the Lu family's roots in the Sichuan royal family. The implications are very wide. On my way here, I've already heard that the capital has arrested more than 30 important court officials because of the officials in Pingyang City. Each one implicates the other. It's like catching mice in summer, each one is more accurate than the other. So serious? She was a little surprised. A small Pingyang City had turned into a rat's nest. When Higashio Motetsu saw her expression, he knew that she didn't know. However, as a friend, he still felt that it was necessary to tell her about the current situation. Otherwise, when she was killed in a daze, she wouldn't even know the reason. Officials cover for each other. There are many people who wear the same pants. However, when one person falls from the horse, a large group of people will be overturned. This time, Xiao Su is very ruthless. Isn't it normal to clean up the atmosphere and punish the corrupt officials? Hearing his tone, Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a little unhappy. She felt that he didn't agree with the big ice cube's approach. Higashio Motetsu didn't mind her tit-for-tat tone. He changed his posture and leaned against the tree trunk. With a lazy expression, he leisurely said, "Little girl, that's because you're inexperienced. You don't know that officialdom is also a fierce battle. No one would have guessed that someone who was supposed to be heading north to mine would pass by Pingyang City. Even if he was passing by Pingyang City, how could he coincidentally appear in the Lu residence? Moreover, even if the Lu estate had mistakenly captured him, why was all the evidence placed in front of Lu Ying in one night? Why did the governor of the Two Rivers lead troops to surround the entire Lu estate that night? Chu Qingyan slowly fell silent in his rhetorical question. She knew the answer, but it wasn't the whole story. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her and said calmly, That's because Xiao Su had his eyes on Lu Ying from the start. Even if he didn't mistakenly enter the Lu estate, he would have thought of ways to make Lu Ying expose his foxtail. Therefore, the evidence of his crimes should have been collected long ago. He chose the day of Lu Ying's birthday to announce it to the public. In one night, he captured the officials and merchants who were in cahoots with Lu Ying and confirmed the evidence of his crimes. With one move, he cut off Lu Ying's escape route and also cut off the time that the Lu bloodline could be saved. Looking at the entire Sichuan, I'm afraid that only the King of England has such a ruthless method. Although he was analyzing the entire matter as a spectator, he couldn't help but admire Xiao Su's meticulous planning and swift methods. Perhaps this person could really be his opponent. Higashio Motetsu's words were basically consistent, but the only thing she didn't understand was why the big ice cube had his eyes on Lu Ying from the start. They should have gone to look for ores, but why did the big ice cube take a detour and appear in Pingyang City? It wasn't that she was against the big ice cube getting rid of evil for the people, but she felt that the big ice cube's abnormal actions made her feel uneasy, as if something was going to happen. Recently, the Sichuan emperor has been thoroughly investigating these officials. In the capital, those who have their houses confiscated, those who have their heads beheaded, the entire imperial court is in a state of panic, afraid that they will be caught in the act. And the more people that are executed, the more people that Xiao Su will offend. It was no wonder that Hua Ling and the others had received so many carrier pigeons along the way. There were letters that came from all over the place, and the big ice cube often stayed up all night to deal with them. It turned out that those were the evidence collected by the fierce cavalry, but she had never taken this matter to heart. And when she casually asked, the big ice cube only said that it was official business. She could only blame herself for not thinking in that direction at all. So you should have guessed it. Lu Ying's arrest has implicated the Lu family's foundation and touched the Lu family's reverse scale. This young master guesses that in the near future, this big enemy will come looking for you all. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and revealed a shocked expression. Higashio Motetsu was right. The Lu family's matter was actually a deeply rooted and stubborn power. The big ice cube had indeed offended many people because of this matter. After Higashio Motetsu finished speaking, there was no sound beside him. He couldn't help but lower his head and see that the little girl's face was a bit pale, as if she had been frightened. Higashio Motetsu immediately regretted saying all this. Originally, when he saw the little girl's lively manner that angered him with every word, he had the idea of telling her this matter. He wanted to scare her, but when he really scared her, he was a bit unwilling. All right, you don't need to worry. Since Xiao Su dares to do this, it means that he already has a countermeasure. You can be at ease and be your little princess. If you are really afraid, then follow this young master. This young master still lacks a servant girl. You are a bit dumb, but for our friendship, this young master won't abandon you. As soon as he spoke, he was met with a shadowless kick. Higashio Motetsu dodged and said hatefully, "Hey, don't be so ungrateful. This young master has good intentions. I appreciate your kindness, but I don't need to thank you." Chu Qingyan gave a cold snort and then nimbly jumped down from the tree trunk. She raised her head and made a face at him. "Hey, you are leaving so soon. Won't you stay and talk with this young master for a while?" Higashio Motetsu felt like he had been kicked to the curb after crossing the river. "It's too late. Young Master Dongting, you should wash up and go to bed." Chu Qingyan stood under the tree and looked up at him. "It is indeed late." Higashio Motetsu thought for a moment and then took out something from his chest and threw it to her. Chu Qingyan caught it and looked at it. It was a whistle made of bamboo. "Why are you giving me this whistle? You can blow it when you miss me. Maybe this young master will appear." Higashio Motetsu held his chin and joked. Does this person think that he is the magic lamp of Allah? That he will appear as soon as he wipes the bottle? You continue to be narcissistic. This young lady won't accompany you. Chu Qingyan waved at him and left without looking back. The person under the moon looked at the direction of the girl's departure with bright eyes and sighed softly. "Xiao Su, did you really leave a way out for yourself? Why do I feel that you are always forcing yourself to a dead end? Is this young master's illusion?" Chapter 239. Chu Qingyan came to the tea house and took the two people back. On the way back, Chu Qingyan was unusually silent. Xining had a belly full of questions, but seeing her master's unusual cheerfulness, she tactfully shut her mouth. Jin Xen looked at her in confusion, but also chose not to ask. His current status was only an attendant, so he just had to do his job well. The inns in Yangsha County were actually residential houses, and the people who lived there lived in them. Because they had more people, they had contracted an entire courtyard. When Chu Qingyan walked into the courtyard, she saw the back of a person looking up at the moon. At this time, she was also hiding something in her heart and had no time to pay attention. However, this back was too familiar, and his actions surprised her. Ethereal. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and sent Xining and Jin Xian away. She walked towards him alone. At this time, Ethereal was rubbing something in his hand. When he heard footsteps, he immediately put the thing into his sleeve and turned around. When he saw the young princess consort, a trace of surprise floated onto his face, but he quickly bowed his head in greeting. Greetings to the young princess consort. Chu Qingyan waved her hand, indicating that he did not need to greet. Then she asked curiously, "What are you doing here?" If she was not wrong, the usually carefree young master seemed to be a bit melancholic. This was the first time she had sensed such an emotion from this carefree and unrestrained person. There must be something strange about this unusual situation, so she had walked over in surprise. Admiring the moon. At this time, Ethereal had returned to his usual inattentive self. The melancholy just now seemed to be an illusion. However, the excuse of admiring the moon was too stupid. She did not remember him being such a sentimental person. If he had said that he was meditating on the ingredients for a new prescription, she might have been fooled. Is that so? Are you sure it's admiring the moon and not something bothering you? She had a feeling that something was wrong with Ethereal ever since she came to the ocean. Ethereal did not expect the little consort to be so astute. He paused for a moment before replying, "Let's admire the moon and relax. I've been a little tired from studying herbs recently." Chu Qingyan nodded. "All right, but the wind is cold and the dew is heavy. It's better to finish your daydreaming and rest early." After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she turned around to leave. Suddenly, the person behind her spoke up to stop her. "Is there anything else?" Chu Qingyan turned to look at him. A look of struggle appeared on Ethereal's face, as if it was hesitating whether it should speak. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan did not urge him. Ethereal knew that the young Wang Fei might not be able to give him an answer due to her young age, but in this group of womenfolk, he was most familiar with the young Wang Fei. So in the end, Ethereal made a decision and looked directly at the person who was waiting for him to speak. "Young Wang Fei, if someone made a promise to you but left in the end, what would you think of that person?" Chu Qingyan blinked. It seemed to be an emotional issue. She did not expect this Ethereal to be so deeply buried. But if she rashly asked at this time, it was likely that Ethereal would never discuss this matter with her again. Therefore, she thought about it seriously and said, "It depends on what kind of promise it is. But since it can be called a promise, it must be very important. If it's between a man and a woman, for a woman to break a promise, it's hard to forgive." Ethereal's pupils contracted and he took 2 steps back. When he saw the person in front of him looking at him in surprise, he forced himself to calm down and then asked with difficulty, "Really?" Chu Qingyan saw his emotions fluctuate so much and hesitated. But she did not want to brush him off. Breaking a promise once, not believing it again. This is my personal opinion. I don't know about other people. Chu Qingyan was slightly apologetic. This was the truth. This one understands. Ethereal frowned. Then he said, "Young Wang Fei, go rest early. You still have to go out tomorrow." With that, he turned and was about to leave. Chu Qingyan could feel that his footsteps were a little heavy. She reflected on her words and wondered if she had been too harsh. Biting her lips, she finally looked at the lonely figure and said, "Maybe if that person cares enough, he will not be calculative. Won't make a fuss?" That person was very generous to others, but to him, he would always haggle over the smallest details. Ethereal smiled bitterly. He could only swallow the sins he had brought upon himself. Chu Qingyan looked at Ethereal's receding figure and sighed softly. Then she turned and saw a slender figure standing in the corridor. She rubbed her eyes. After making sure that she was not seeing things, she immediately ran over. "Big Ice Cube, were you waiting for me?" Chu Qingyan ran up to him and asked with narrowed eyes. A person who was born noble could not hide his brilliance even if he was standing in a cold and dark place. Xiao Su lowered his eyebrows. "Did you meet anything interesting when you went out?" Big Ice Cube's words brought up the interesting things that she had seen tonight. Chu Qingyan was like pouring beans as she rattled on. "The tofu pudding at East Street is very delicious. The boss is like a tofu beauty. She is so beautiful, but she is already taken. Under the willow tree, there is an old grandpa who made clay figurines that are more lifelike than the ones in the capital. Also, I bumped into a very beautiful and domineering older sister at the entrance of an alley. She even said that she was a doctor, but she told me not to wander around at night." Xiao Su listened to her long-winded words. If it had been in the past, he would have turned and left. Now, he did not know why, but he felt very comfortable listening to her. After Chu Qingyan finished her recollection, she suddenly remembered what Higashio Motetsu said to her on the tree. The smile on her face suddenly disappeared. The joy in her heart seemed to have disappeared in an instant. All that was left was the worry and uneasiness of the person in front of her. Xiao Su was originally listening to what she had seen and heard on the road. He found it strange that she suddenly fell silent, but he did not expect that she would pounce on him like a tiger and protect herself. He reached out to support her and was a little surprised. "Were you bullied on the road?" His tone suddenly became cold. Chu Qingyan heard him and shook her head. "It's nothing. I just wanted to hug you." Hearing this, Xiao Su relaxed his brows and reached out to pat her on the shoulder. She was so happy just a moment ago, but now her face was filled with worry. Xiao Su was suddenly a little confused. Why was this child's mood like the weather in June, changing so quickly? He recalled that the parenting books once said that when children reached a certain age, they would become sentimental. Parents did not need to worry too much and only needed to guide them. "It's fine. Ben Wang is here. You don't need to worry. Go back and wash up early. You should be tired after playing for a day." Chu Qingyan reluctantly left the warm embrace. The worry on her face had already disappeared. Her eyes were bright as she softly asked, "Big Ice Block, will we reach Fuli Mountain Range safely?" The eyes in front of him were as bright as a mirror, making him a little stunned. Chapter 240. Big Ice Block, you'll arrive safely, right? Without waiting for a reply, she couldn't help asking again. Xiao Su reached out to cover her head. His wide sleeves covered her eyes, so she couldn't see the expression on his face. "Yes, this king will make sure you arrive safely." Chu Qingyan's smile brightened. That fellow Dong Ting really didn't lie to her. Big Ice Block had already made all the preparations, so how could he be defeated so easily? But at that time, she didn't notice that when Xiao Su said he would make sure she arrived safely, he didn't include her. Seeing the little fellow happily come in and loudly call out for Xining, Xiao Su's lips slightly curled. When she went out, he sat in the room and finished writing the memorial, so he began to miss this little fellow. It wasn't until a servant came in to report that she was back that his heart finally calmed down. But after waiting for a while and seeing that she didn't come in, he walked out to take a look, but he didn't expect to hear the conversation between her and Ethereal. Breaking a promise? Was it hard to forgive in this lifetime? Breaking a promise once, not believing every time. The little fellow's personality was quite resolute, a bit like him. However, he was afraid that many of the promises he made would be broken. At this moment, the noble and untainted person suddenly had a hint of desolation and a sense of loss. Early in the morning, Chu Qingyan had Jin Xen wake everyone up. "My little ancestor, what time is it now? You're going to visit them so early, maybe they haven't even woken up yet." Hua Ling yawned with a face full of anger. "Be good, put away your depression. Haven't you heard of sincerity and sincerity? We're asking them for help, so of course we have to come early. Maybe when they open the door and see us, they'll be moved and agree to treat my father. Wouldn't that be a happy ending?" Chu Qingyan crossed her arms. Compared to the people in the courtyard who were suffering from severe sleep deprivation, she was smiling with a face full of energy and vigor. Turin silently clenched the hilt of his saber. He had been patrolling the entire night and hadn't had time to catch up on sleep. Wood Spirit silently hugged the half-finished product in his arms. He had been fumbling with the blueprints all night and hadn't slept yet. Ethereal stood silently at the side. Her green eyes showed that she had not slept the entire night. However, Chu Qingyan couldn't care less at this time. She had to let them eat and drink until they were full, and then they were ready to go on their way. Xiao Su, who was sitting at the side, coughed lightly as he watched the little girl busying herself. Thus, the fire spirit stopped complaining, the Turin began to eat the porridge, the wood spirit began to eat the dishes, and the ethereal was still floating in the air. Chu Qingyan felt that Big Ice Cube's cough was too intimidating. In the future, she also wanted to secretly learn from him and learn a little. Then, she would be able to intimidate these arrogant and fierce riders who didn't take her words seriously. Soon, everyone went out. They heard that Ethereal's junior sister lived halfway up the mountain. They had to pass through the town and find that mountain to climb up. On the mountainside not far from Yangsha County, there was a thatched hut that occupied a large area. Although it looked very simple on the outside and was only built with wood and straw, there was everything inside. At this time, the tightly shut door opened, and a few plainly dressed youths walked out. They held many medicinal herbs in their hands, and then they spread them out on a big rock outside, preparing to dry the herbs. After a while, a woman walked out with a bamboo basket on her back, followed by two youths. The youths who were drying the herbs immediately stood up and respectfully greeted her. "Greetings, senior sister." The woman with a bright face smiled and nodded. She instructed, "These herbs are to be used to make the Tranquil Heart pill. You can't have the slightest bit of moisture in them. Dry them well for me." Her voice was clear and bright, and the rose-colored blood droplet on her forehead sparkled with dazzling beauty. This person was the woman Chu Qingyan bumped into last night. The person in charge of this thatched hut was Ethereal's junior sister, Qingyan Luo, whom Chu Qingyan and the others had been searching for day and night. "Yes, we'll definitely follow senior sister's instructions," the youths replied with a grin. "What's so funny? You should do things properly." Qingyan Luo's face stiffened, and a faint majesty appeared on her bright face. The youths immediately stopped laughing and said seriously, "We know we're wrong. We'll do our job properly." Qingyan Luo nodded with satisfaction. "Go and do your work." Just as she finished speaking, another man walked out of the thatched hut. He was dressed simply in a green robe. He said with some concern, "Senior sister, are you going to pick herbs again? I heard that there are ferocious beasts on Yangfeng Mountain recently. Let's change the time." Qingyan Luo said disapprovingly, "Third junior brother, when did you become so wishy-washy? Do you think those ferocious beasts will be afraid of me or them?" The ferocious beasts would probably avoid senior sister. The poison she carried with her was enough to make those ferocious beasts suffer a lot. Besides, I have to take these two junior brothers out to gain some experience. Otherwise, they won't know how to pick herbs. Besides, the old lady in the West District is running out of medicine. Without the white ocean grass, she won't be able to control her illness. This is an important matter, so I have to go there personally. Qingyan Luo lifted the bamboo basket on her back. With her two junior brothers at her feet, she turned to leave. "When will you be back, senior sister?" Sha Feng couldn't help but take a step forward. 3 days at least, 5 days at most. In any case, I'll leave the affairs of the sect to you. If I find out that something went wrong when you return, I'll skin you alive. Qingyan Luo raised her eyebrows at him, then left without looking back. Sha Feng touched his head. Senior sister's fierceness was increasing day by day. If she continued to be so fierce, no one would want her. Qingyan Luo brought her two junior brothers down the mountain. They didn't walk fast, but they arrived at the foot of the mountain in the blink of an eye. "Senior sister, it seems like someone is coming toward us." One of the junior brothers pointed at a group of people in the distance and said to her, "They're probably here to seek medical treatment. Don't pay attention to them. Anyway, your third senior brother is here. Let's go first and climb up Yangfeng Mountain before sunset. Cheng Yanluo didn't even look at them and turned to another path. Okay. The group of people was none other than Chu Qingyan and the others who were hurrying over. Young master, it should be in front. Hua Ling pointed at the thatched hut halfway up the mountain and said with a smile. Chu Qingyan looked into the distance and was delighted. She had searched high and low for it, but now she found it without any effort. She finally found it. The group went up the mountain. When the thatched hut came into view, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. This place was inexplicably compatible with an ancient poem she had learned before. Building a hut in the human realm, but without the noise of carriages and horses. What can a gentleman do? His heart is far away. Plucking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence, leisurely looking at the southern mountain. The mountain's aura is fine day and night, and birds fly together. There's a true meaning in it, but I've forgotten to explain it. She unconsciously read it out loud, and Xiao Su turned to look at her. If you like it, I can get someone to build you one in the future. Chu Qingyan smiled sweetly at him. Then let's stay here and admire the flowers in spring, the moon in summer, the chrysanthemums in autumn, and the snow in winter. What do you think? Mo's eyes moved. Finally, he frowned and agreed. Okay. Another betrayal was added to the list. Chapter 241. After finding the place, the group quickened their pace and walked towards the thatched hut. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised that a famous doctor would live in such a dilapidated thatched hut. It was as if a gust of wind could blow the roof off. However, she knew that many experts liked to live in seclusion, so it was not surprising. At this moment, a group of disciples who were drying herbs saw them. They seemed to be used to people who came up the mountain to seek medical treatment. However, they stood up politely and asked with a smile, "Are you here to seek medical treatment?" Chu Qingyan nodded immediately. "Yes, we took the liberty to disturb you. Sorry for the trouble." "Wait a moment, I'll call our senior." A disciple immediately turned and went in. While waiting, Chu Qingyan turned around and saw Kong Ling standing in front of the straw hut in a daze. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she sighed softly. Perhaps it was because she knew that her junior sister was living in such a place, and she couldn't bear to see it. At this moment, Ethereal stared blankly at the thatched hut in front of her. Thousands of thoughts surged in her heart. However, she quickly calmed herself down because she heard footsteps. Her heart could not help but clench and her gaze shifted to the door. Someone is coming out. Chu Qingyan said to Big Ice Cube beside her. She was a little nervous. Xiao Su patted her hand, indicating that she did not need to worry. Chu Qingyan returned a smile. Two people appeared at the door. One was the disciple just now, and the other was a 17 or 18-year-old man. He had a clear and honest appearance. Chu Qingyan immediately went up to them. "Brother, may I know if you have a female doctor with great medical skills here? We're here to look for her." At this moment, Ethereal interjected. "Her name is Cheng Yanluo. You're looking for my senior? Unfortunately, she went out to gather herbs this morning." Sha Feng replied politely. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly turned to Ethereal who was standing in the crowd. His face was full of surprise, and his fingers trembled as he raised them. You're the eldest senior? It's me, third junior. How have you been these years?" Ethereal stepped forward. Her face was filled with unconcealable joy, but there seemed to be a touch of guilt in her joy. No. Senior said that there is no more eldest senior in the sect. If she sees you, she will throw you out. Sorry, senior. Please leave. Sha Feng took a few steps back with a difficult expression. He waved his hand to let the others leave. Third junior, the matter of that year, Ethereal wanted to explain, but Sha Feng raised his hand. Eldest senior brother, if you have anything to say, you should say it to senior sister. You owe senior sister the most these years. Then when will she be back? A bitter expression appeared on Ethereal's face. At least 3 days, at most 5 days. If you want to wait, then wait. Calm. Sin was. No one knew that everything had been fine just now, but in an instant, the atmosphere had changed to them being chased away. Ethereal, Did you offend that junior? Chu Qingyan was a little puzzled after the group left the mountain. Ethereal smiled bitterly. You can say that. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid this matter will be ruined because of me. Chu Qingyan shook her head. It's not your fault. If it weren't for your help, we wouldn't have been able to find a doctor who could cure my father. Ethereal smiled, but her smile was very faint. Chu Qingyan knew that she was in a bad mood, so she tactfully didn't disturb him. Walking in front of Big Ice Block, Chu Qingyan tugged at his sleeve and asked softly, Big Ice Block, what's going on between Ethereal and her junior? Xiao Su glanced at her. You should ask the both of them about this. Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue. She had asked the wrong person. Big Ice Block was someone who didn't care about gossip and only cared about national affairs. How would he know? But just when he thought that Big Ice Cube wouldn't speak anymore, he opened his mouth instead. 10 years ago, Kongling became Divine Dr. Luo's disciple. 6 years later, he completed his studies and returned. I've never heard Kongling mention what happened in those 6 years. But I think it's probably a romantic affair with Qingyan Luo. Chu Qingyan nodded. She guessed so too. Otherwise, Ethereal wouldn't have asked her if she had gone back on her promise. Perhaps she had promised her junior something but didn't fulfill it. That was why she was kicked out the moment she saw her. Big Ice Block, I heard that the female doctor will only be back in a few days. Let's hurry on with our journey. Although she hadn't seen the rumored female divine doctor, she knew the importance of the matter. She didn't want to delay Big Ice Block's journey. You don't intend to treat your father's illness? Xiao Su was a little surprised. He knew that her father's illness had always been a big stone in her heart. She was so excited that she couldn't sleep. Why did she give up now? Chu Qingyan knew that he had misunderstood. She explained, we were anxious because we couldn't find him in the past. Now that we know where he is, we just need to leave our men here and wait for the female doctor to return. We can pass the medical book to her. If she's willing, she can bring father over for treatment. This way, it won't delay our matters. Xiao Su nodded. This was a good idea. Halfway up the mountain, beside the thatched hut, Sha Feng was anxious when he saw that there was no one at the foot of the mountain. The disciple who went to check on them came back. Sha Feng immediately asked, Where are they? Those people have already left. They should have left Yangsha County by now. The disciple reported while panting. Sha Feng fiercely slapped the large stone beside him. This eldest senior brother, how could he just leave like that? He didn't even wait for senior sister to come back. What do we do now? They're all gone. When will the dispute between the two of them be resolved? The disciple asked in confusion. Third senior brother, weren't you the one who told them to leave? But he could have insisted on not leaving. If he persisted, he might have been able to wait for senior sister to come back. He couldn't disobey his senior sister's orders, but he still hoped that his eldest senior brother could stay. The disciple shook his head. The world of adults was really hard to understand. Forget it, he should just go dry the herbs. The carriage slowly moved forward. At this time, a clear and sad song entered the carriage. Chu Qingyan couldn't help lifting the curtain and asking, Who is playing the song? Hualing replied, It's that fellow Ethereal. Ever since he came down from the mountain, he's been acting strange. Chu Qingyan heard this and looked behind the carriage. She saw a thin and handsome person sitting on the back of a horse. He was holding a bamboo leaf and gently blowing it. The song was sad, making people feel a bit sad. He's feeling sad again. If he can't bear to leave, then just stay. This kind of person really makes people unhappy. Hualing muttered. Chu Qingyan revealed a smile. It wasn't hard to hear the worry in Hualing's voice. These people, they all had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Chapter 242. Chu Qingyan fell asleep while listening to the melancholy tunes along the way. She was so excited last night that she couldn't sleep. Today, she climbed the mountain and went down the mountain. Her energy had long been exhausted. At this time, she could only curl up in the carriage and sleep soundly. At this time, Xiao Su had in his hands all the information of the dozen or so cities that they were about to reach in the past 10 years. From the officials to the people's livelihood, natural and man-made disasters, there were many major disasters that had occurred. Almost all of it was placed on the table. He had not slept for a full 6 hours for a period of time. He had been reviewing this information day and night. He circled the problematic officials and incidents and wanted to focus on them. At this time, he felt a little tired. He raised his hand and pinched the space between his eyebrows. He turned sideways and looked at the little fellow who was sleeping peacefully. The irritation in his heart was unknowingly soothed. Xiao Su curled his lips and felt a little helpless. This little fellow seemed to be able to sleep soundly no matter where she was. It was as if she was sleeping peacefully on her side when the world collapsed. What could you do to her? However, this easygoing personality was somewhat likable. And it was also during this moment that the restless little fellow had unknowingly climbed onto his lap and pillowed her head on his lap. Then she revealed a satisfied look. Xiao Su's hand that was holding the brush stiffened slightly. He put down the brush and wanted to move the little fellow back to the couch. However, just as he stretched out his hand, this little fellow, who knew if she was really asleep or pretending to be asleep, actually went overboard. She hugged his arm and did not let go. She even rubbed her face against it. Then she hugged his arm and fell silent. This time, Xiao Su was in a dilemma. Should he push her away or not? If he pushed her away, he would definitely wake her up. If he didn't push her away, he wouldn't be able to continue dealing with this information. Big ice cube, sleep and rest. The unconscious muttering made Xiao Su slightly startled. During class, when he lowered his head to look, the little fellow's eyes were tightly shut and she had a satisfied look. In the end, after weighing the pros and cons, Xiao Su still couldn't bear to wake her up. He allowed her to hug his arms, use his legs as a pillow, and fall asleep. He thought back to the things that had happened in the past few days. Was there anything that had not been dealt with? The memorials that had been sent back to Jingdo contained a new round of evidence, as well as a new batch of officials that were about to be arrested. He wondered if his father was satisfied with the efficiency of his work. Are you satisfied? Xiao Su could not help but laugh at himself. Regardless of whether he was satisfied or not, it was no longer that important to him. The cool breeze, accompanied by the warmth of the sun, blew into the car and brushed past the two people cuddling together. He seemed to be a little tired and sleepy. Unknowingly, the person lying on his lap had curled up into his arms step by step. Unknowingly, the person with his head lowered was slowly drawing the person in his arms closer. The two young bodies were getting closer and closer, just like the two willow branches outside the car window that were blown by the wind. They were entangled and could not be separated. Outside the car, the carrier pigeon landed again. Hualing took the letter and wanted to immediately pass it to the person in the car, but he was stopped 3 steps away by Turin. What are you doing? Hualing was a little confused. Master hasn't had a good rest in 4 days. Do you plan on waking him up? Turin put down his hand. He did not say anything, but his gaze had already turned to the carriage. Hualing followed his gaze and saw that the curtains were raised from time to time. He could see the two figures leaning against each other. They were so harmonious, so matching. Hualing immediately put away the letter in his hand and said with a smile, "Then I'll wait until tonight to give it to Master." Turin did not reply. His gaze moved away from the car and turned to the blue sky. Hualing, I have a feeling that a storm is coming. Hualing put away his playful expression and looked at him with a serious expression. On this road, Master has offended too many people. I feel that Master is urgently making a plan. This is a feeling that I have never felt before after following Master for so many years. Turin said in a low voice as if he did not want others to hear. Hualing nodded. I also have the same feeling. Turin turned his gaze back to the two people in the car, or rather, it fell on the delicate face. I hope that this harmony can be maintained. Hualing was silent and let out a sigh. As the most elite fierce cavalry in the Sichuan, they had a keenness that others did not have. Although their people had already evacuated from the capital, they could still faintly feel the fluctuations in people's movements and the surging waves in the dark. The two of them did not say anything else because they had always followed Master's orders. Even if they were wrong, they would resolutely carry it out. The afternoon wind was not as cold as the morning wind. It carried the warmth of the sun as it fell on the two people in the car. They couldn't help but indulge in this comfortable afternoon. Who knew if this kind of snuggling would happen again in the future? Chu Qingyan, who was sleeping, did not know how hard it was to obtain this kind of peace. Capital Imperial Palace. In the imperial study, memorials were piled up on the table. It was basically a list of officials that had been gathered in the past few days regarding corruption and bribery, as well as the conflicts of interest with Madame Lu. Evidence of crimes, account books, and letters were all placed on another table. These were all sent to the capital by Xiao Su. They were all important and trivial matters. Every one of them was enough to make the officials involved speechless and directly convict them. In the past few days, everyone in the palace had been acting cautiously, for fear of provoking the person in the imperial study. When the Sichuan emperor saw the evidence, he felt as if there was a fire in his chest. He had thought that the country under his rule was not as bad as he had imagined. However, when the evidence was presented, he realized that it was worse than he had imagined. The reason for the empty state treasury had finally been found. The gold, silver, and jewelry obtained from the confiscation had filled the entire state treasury, but there was no place to put them. It was enough to show how deeply these vermin had eaten. Your Majesty, please calm down. It's not worth it if you are angry and hurt your body. Eunuch Xiao came in with a medicinal soup that could clear away heat and detoxify. Xiao Ji, I'm speechless. I'm ashamed to face my ancestors. Look at how poorly I've governed this country. The West Xian Emperor sighed. He still felt stifled in his chest. Eunuch Xiao hurriedly said, Your Majesty, don't say that. Look, haven't these people received the punishment they deserved? The evidence collected by His Highness King Ing was enough to convict them of their crimes. The vermin being caught is a cause for celebration for the people. Your Majesty should be happy. Yes, the King of England has really helped me a lot this time. The Sichuan Emperor stroked his beard and said undeniably, The King of England is really a valuable arm of your Majesty. If it were someone else, they wouldn't have such strong courage. Eunuch Xiao praised with a smile. The Sichuan Emperor's hand paused, and he seemed to smile faintly. However, this valuable arm of his had been forced to a dead end by him. Chapter 243. Ever since I ascended the throne, I've wanted to reorganize the entire Sichuan kingdom. Unfortunately, I don't have the strength. I can only let them nibble away at the foundation of the Sichuan kingdom. Sichuan Emperor stroked the dragon head on the armrest with one hand, looking disappointed. When Eunuch Xiao heard this, he quickly comforted, Your Majesty, His Royal Highness is helping you collect evidence and punish those vermin. You can rest assured. Sichuan Emperor paused when he heard this. He turned to look at Xiao Ji, who had been with him for decades. Xiao Ji, who had accompanied him since he was a child, suddenly raised his eyebrows and said, Do you also think that I'm too harsh on Su? Too cold-blooded? When he finished speaking, Eunuch Xiao lowered his head and said, Your Majesty, I don't know how to answer. Sichuan Emperor laughed when he heard this, but he quickly restrained himself. His expression was complicated and difficult to discern. Xiao Ji, you actually think so too, right? You're just afraid that I'll punish you, so you don't dare to speak the truth. Eunuch Xiao lowered his head even more and sighed softly. Your Majesty, you've already made up your mind. I can't change your decision no matter what I say. Sichuan Emperor shook his head and said, You're such a cunning old man. Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty. Eunuch Xiao licked his lips. Sichuan Emperor choked and then snorted coldly. Xiao Ji was right. Regardless of whether he felt guilty about Su or not, once he made up his mind, he would not allow himself to change it. Even if he regretted it and wanted to stop, it was already too late. The moment Su stepped out of the capital city, everything was set in stone. Your Majesty, the fourth prince requests an audience. At this moment, a young eunuch entered the palace and reported. Sichuan Emperor's gloomy expression immediately turned sunny when he heard this. Quickly summon the fourth prince into the palace. After a while, Xiao Ran stepped into the imperial study. Greetings, Imperial Father, Xiao Ran said with a smile as he bowed to the Sichuan Emperor. No manners. Sichuan Emperor pretended to be unhappy, but the smile lines on his face betrayed his current mood. Xiao Ran chuckled. Imperial Father, do we still need to talk about rules between father and son? Wouldn't that be too sad? Nonsense, where did you learn these strange words? Sichuan Emperor smiled and shook his head. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the emperor was in a good mood. He did not blame Xiao Ran for his rudeness at all. When Xiao Ran heard this, he suddenly felt a little absent-minded, and a charming smile appeared in his mind. Hey, you're still calculating this with me? Don't you know that talking about money hurts feelings? Ranner, what are you thinking about? Sichuan Emperor called out to him when he saw his sons spacing out. Xiao Ran recovered from his memories and smiled. Imperial Father, I was thinking about eldest brother. It's been almost half a year since he left the capital, and I miss him very much. I wonder where he is now and how he's doing. After all, it's not like the capital, and there are many conditions that can't keep up. Sichuan Emperor lowered his head and glanced at the cases in front of him. He sighed faintly. It's true that half a year has passed. You're a good child. You still miss your imperial brother. Imperial Father, I want to see eldest brother. Xiao Ran suddenly spoke. This was a thought that had been circling in his mind. Ever since Qing Yan left, he felt that his entire life had become dull. He had never felt this way before, and he had never thought that his life would be so exciting because of someone's arrival, and so dull because of someone's departure. In reality, the person he wanted to see wasn't his eldest brother, but the young girl who had illuminated his entire summer. Ranner, you've already grown up. Don't say such childish things again. Sichuan Emperor suddenly looked at Xiao Ran with a serious expression. He wholeheartedly wanted to raise this son of his, so he shouldn't get too close to Su. Otherwise, in the future, everything would be difficult to handle. Xiao Ran pursed his lips. He didn't know why his imperial father's occasional words and actions were always against him getting close to his eldest brother, while his imperial mother explicitly forbade him from doing so. In the past, he didn't understand, but in the past half a year, he vaguely had an answer. Xiao Ran smiled brightly. Imperial Father, I was joking with you. Even if I left the city now, I wouldn't be able to catch up with eldest brother. If you really miss him, then wait until eldest brother has set up camp in the Fuli mountain range, then I will go and visit him. At that time, I would also like to see that mountain range that is rumored to be rich in resources. Sichuan Emperor nodded in relief. Ranner, these are troubled times. You only need to study according to the courses that Imperial Father has taught you. In the future, when you are strong enough, it will come in handy. Chao Ji stood in the hall. When he heard Sichuan Emperor's words, he lowered his head even more. Anyone who understood the situation would be able to hear the hint in Sichuan Emperor's words. Sooner or later, His Majesty would hand over the entire Sichuan to the fourth prince. Xiao Ran nodded solemnly. He knew that his imperial father had high hopes for him, and even his imperial mother had been urging him to study hard and practice martial arts. Imperial Father, don't worry. I will not let you down. Good boy. Sichuan Emperor nodded with satisfaction, then waved to him and said, Come here and let Imperial Father see how tall you are now. Xiao Ran immediately strode forward and said with a smile, Imperial Mother said that I has grown a lot taller. Sichuan Emperor touched his head and nodded with relief. Not bad, not bad. You have grown a lot taller. I estimate that by this time next year, you will be as tall as Imperial Father. Xiao Ran would be 13 next year. By that time, the entire Sichuan would have been reorganized, and he would be able to participate in politics. Chao Ji looked at the happy father and son in front of him, as if they were no different from ordinary father and son. This was how His Majesty and the fourth prince usually got along. His Majesty did not have the airs of an emperor, and it was completely different from his usual majesty. It was enough to see how much His Majesty doted on the fourth prince. He suddenly remembered that 7 years ago, when His Royal Highness returned to the imperial study after winning a battle, His Majesty was receiving envoys from other countries. He seemed to have heard His Royal Highness talking to himself outside the hall. I wonder if Imperial Father can still deny it when he sees me? After all, I have grown so big. One was often absent and tried hard to prove himself, but never received the treatment he deserved. The other did not need to try hard to please and could easily get the imperial father's favor that others could not enjoy. This was the difference. Xiao Ji remembered a concubine who had been locked in the cold palace for many years. When we care about a person, no matter how many shortcomings he or she has, we only see his or her good points. But when we don't care about a person at all, no matter how good or how hard he or she works, he or she does not exist in our eyes. This was the difference between caring and not caring. And she was the one who was not cared about. Xiao Ji moved his eyes away and sighed softly in his heart. Every time he saw His Majesty and the fourth prince being close and warm, he could not help but think of the lonely child with hidden expectations in his eyes. Now that child might not have any expectations in his heart anymore. Chapter 244. Ranner, let me test your recent homework. The Sichuan emperor rubbed his chin and suddenly said. Xiao Ran nodded when he heard this, looking like he was all ears. The ancients wanted to be virtuous to the world. What's next? The ancients wanted to be virtuous to the world, first govern the country. To govern the country, first unify the country. To unify 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 the country, then unify the country. To unify the country, then unify the world. Xiao Ran silently recited without hesitation. His voice was bright and clear, giving people a feeling of vitality. The Sichuan emperor nodded in satisfaction as he listened. Finally, he said, Do you understand the meaning of this sentence? I do. It means that if you want to manifest your virtue to the people, you must first govern your country. If you want to govern your country well, you must first govern your home well. If you want to govern your home well, you must first perfect yourself. If you want to perfect yourself, you must correct your mentality. When your mentality is correct, you will be able to perfect yourself. When you perfect yourself, your home will be in order. When your home is in order, your country will be stable and prosperous. When your country is stable and prosperous, the world will be at peace. Imperial Father, am I right? Xiao Ran mischievously winked at the Sichuan emperor. The Sichuan emperor couldn't help but reach out and pat his head. Well said, Ran. Now, you must first learn to correct your mentality and become a wise and intelligent person in the future. Ranner understands. Xiao Ran seriously replied. Ranner, Imperial Father wants you to understand one thing, and that is that in this world, the weak are prey to the strong. Only when you have the highest authority can you do what you want to do. Xiao Ran nodded. I will remember. All right, you can leave first. Imperial Father still has to deal with state affairs. Sichuan Emperor affectionately patted his head. Xiao Ran immediately frowned when he heard this. Imperial Father, you should rest first. Otherwise, no matter how strong your body is, it won't be able to withstand such fatigue if you continue to work like this. Sichuan Emperor didn't think much of it. I'm busy with state affairs, and it's an eventful time now. If I don't deal with it in time, I'm afraid that there will be a big problem. Don't worry, I'll take a break when I have time. Yes. Knowing that it was useless for him to say anything more, Xiao Ran turned to Eunuch Xiao and said, Eunuch Xiao, take good care of my imperial father and remind him to rest. If I find out that you didn't fulfill your duties, this prince definitely won't let you off easily. When Eunuch Xiao heard Xiao Ran's words, he said in fear and trepidation, This old servant will remember the fourth prince's instructions. Sichuan Emperor chuckled. All right, it's useless for you to threaten Xiao Ji. He has been with me for so many years, and he knows my temper best. You'd better worry about your schoolwork. Xiao Ran couldn't help but sigh. With a mature look on his face, he said, Imperial Father, you're not young anymore. Why do you always make people worry about you? Sichuan Emperor choked on his words, but in the end, he was amused. Good boy. After Xiao Ran left the imperial study, Sichuan Emperor still had a faint smile on his face. Xiao Ji, have you noticed that since half a year ago, Ranner's temperament seems to have become more lively? The way he speaks is also strange and likable. But I like this change very much. Xiao Ji thought about it. Half a year ago, wasn't the fourth prince the most attentive to the King of England's mansion? There seemed to be a faint rumor that the fourth prince and the little King of England's consort had a close relationship. But Xiao Ji felt that it was better not to talk about such groundless things. So he echoed, "Yes, this old servant thinks that the fourth prince is becoming more and more sensible." Sichuan Emperor said with some pride, "Consort, you gave birth to a good son for me. Considerate, filial, motivated, and intelligent. I'm afraid that among these children, only Ranner really cares about me." Xiao Ji nodded, but another peerless person appeared in his mind. 10 years ago, His Royal Highness King Ing also fit these four descriptions. Unfortunately, after that fire, he became a man of few words and exiled himself. Xiao Ran went out of the imperial study. The palace maid of the Moon Hall, Jade Rabbit, was already waiting at the door. When she saw him come out, she went to greet him. "Your Highness, Consort Yu wants you to go to the Moon Hall." Xiao Ran followed her to the Moon Hall. Xiao Ran entered the Moon Hall. When Consort Yu saw him, she immediately ordered the palace maid to bring out the carefully brewed soup. "Mother, don't make me drink this every time I comes. I'm almost tired of drinking it." Although Xiao Ran said this, he still drank the soup obediently. Consort Yu glanced at him. "Now that you are growing, it's good to nourish yourself more." Xiao Ran smiled but did not say anything. "Did you go to the imperial study to see your father today?" A stove was lit in the hall, dispelling the cold of winter. Consort Yu lazily leaned against the back of the chair, seemingly uninterested in asking. Xiao Ran nodded, then told her about what happened in the imperial study. He only hid the fact that he was going to find his eldest brother. Consort Yu straightened her body slightly, her face full of pride. "You have to study hard, don't let down your father's expectations." "I know." Xiao Ran nodded. Speaking to hear, Imperial concubine Moon beckoned to him. Xiao Ran obediently walked over. "Imperial concubine mother, what is it?" Consort Yu looked into his eyes. Her eyes, which were usually as gentle as water, were now like a mirror, reflecting his appearance, but no emotions could be seen. Xiao Ran was a bit unnatural. "Mother, is there something you want to say to I?" "Ranner, it's been half a year. Are you still thinking about that girl from the Chu family?" Consort Yu narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. Xiao Su flatly denied, "Mother, you're thinking too much." But that knowing gaze made it impossible for him to hide. Xiao Ran unnaturally lowered his head. Consort Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness, but she still had a beautiful smile on her face. "No one knows a son better than a mother. You came from my stomach, how could mother not know what you're thinking?" A trace of bitterness appeared on Xiao Ran's face. "Mother, I really can't let go of Qingyan." After receiving confirmation, Consort Yu's expression became a bit ugly, but Xiao Su didn't notice because he had his head lowered. However, Consort Yu's mind changed. She felt that this was actually an opportunity, and a mysterious smile appeared on her face. "Ranner, you've already grown up. Mother doesn't want to restrict you too much, but there is a principle that you need to understand. If you want to obtain something that doesn't belong to you, then you need to have enough ability. You need to stand higher than others and control more than others. Only by becoming a person of power that others fear can you protect the people you want to protect." Xiao Su didn't quite understand. "I need to have power and status that others can't reach." "That's right. That's why you need to work hard towards that goal." Xiao Ran nodded solemnly. All right, for Qingyan he would work hard to fight for it. As Imperial concubine Moon saw this, she revealed a triumphant smile. This son of hers was good at everything, but he didn't have the heart for power. It didn't matter. If he didn't have it, then she would be the one to instill it. She didn't believe that she wouldn't be able to change his mind over time. Her life's wish was to raise a generation's ruler. Thus, in the following days, under Consort Yu's unwitting indoctrination, Xiao Ran slowly grew from an honest and kind youth to a person who was obsessed with power. Of course, this was a story for another time. Chapter 245. This month, to Chu Qingyan, could be said to have passed like a century. However, when she looked back, she felt that time had passed in a hurry. Everything she had experienced was still vivid in her mind. Their group left Yangsha County and entered Ji County. Coincidentally, they ran into the son of the Ji County magistrate who was bullying people on the street. Big Ice Cube captured him, and the group went to the county yamen for a lesson. Along the way, they flipped through Ji County's recent political achievements to look at. They found many cases where officials were heartless. That day, the Ji County magistrate was suspended from his post for investigation. They stayed in Ji County for 2 days. The Jingdo imperial envoy from Pingyang City came overnight to take over the investigation of the Ji County magistrate. After leaving Ji County, it was Jizhe County. The Jizhe County magistrate was said to be a diligent and honest official who loved the people. However, there was a notorious bully in the county. Rumor had it that this bully had people in Jingdo. Normally, he acted tyrannically. Even the Jizhe County magistrate could not do anything about him. Every time he passed it on to a higher official, it would be suppressed for various reasons. Over time, the county magistrate could only turn a blind eye to him. Once they arrived at Jizhe County, Xiao directly revealed his identity to the Jizhe County magistrate. He organized all of the cases that the bully had committed. He then wrote a letter to the Jingdo imperial envoy. In less than 2 days, the bully was arrested and brought to justice. Even the official he claimed to have people in Jingdo was traced back to the vine and found a wrongful case. Once again, it implicated 3 or 4 court officials. The group of people left Jizhe and entered Liuxiang City. It was a city rich in flowers. While they were still outside the city, they could already smell the fragrance. This place was also the main source of spices for the palace. However, Chu Qingyan found that the difference between the rich and poor in the city, which should have been rich because of the supply of spices, was very clear. Liuxiang City had a family of spices, the Lu family. They mainly provided all kinds of expensive spices to the harem. However, the source of these spices were all purchased cheaply from the surrounding farmers. Then, they processed the spices and sent them into the palace. Their usual way of squeezing is to make the poor poorer and them richer. However, the supply of spices to the palace was not fixed. It needed to be selected every year. Only the person who won first place was qualified to supply the palace. After all, the people who used the spices were the most distinguished people in Sichuan, such as the empress, imperial concubines, and princesses. So every year, the palace eunuchs in charge of purchasing would come down to Liuxiang City to judge. But no matter how the competition went, the Lu family would always come out on top. Whether or not there was something fishy going on, everyone knew. However, the judges for this year's selection were not only the purchasing eunuch from the palace, but also a woman he had never seen before. That person was the wood spirit subordinate who was most proficient in creating spices, but the purchasing eunuch claimed that she was a female official sent by the higher-ups to be in charge of purchasing. In the end, the result of the selection was that an unknown Huang family that made a living by developing spices won the competition. The Lu family refused to accept this and colluded with the purchasing eunuch to frame the Huang family. However, they were caught on the spot. At the same time, it was revealed that the Lu family and the purchasing eunuch had been in cahoots for many years, abusing their power for personal gain and other illegal activities. When they dug deeper, the results were even more shocking. As a result, a small spices selection unearthed a complete vine that was abusing their power for personal gain. Hanging on the vine were not only the spices they purchased, but also the people involved in the procurement of services and ingredients. The imperial envoy from the capital followed, organizing these matters into memorials and sending them to the capital. The Sichuan emperor was once again enraged. For a time, a great purge began in the imperial harem. It was said that the maternal families of many imperial concubines were also involved. Immediately, everyone in the palace felt insecure. The imperial envoy sent from Jingdo also complained repeatedly. Before he could finish handling one case, other cases had already come one after another. He was already in a terrible fix. It was said that his head of hair had almost been pulled out by him. On the way north, he punished corrupt officials and dug out the malignant tumors buried deep under the people's livelihood. On this road, it was not very smooth. Chu Qingyan sat in the courtyard and looked at the brightly lit room. A faint trace of worry floated onto her face. Just now, Hua Ling had brought in a new letter. She knew that in the coming city, there would be another open and covert struggle. Tonight, Big Ice Cube would be busy until late at night again. In this month, she had seen what it meant to work day and night. In order to deal with these eunuchs in one strike, Big Ice Cube had put in a lot of effort and sweat. Even she, as a bystander, couldn't help but feel tired for him. However, she could not speak out to dissuade him because Big Ice Cube was doing things for the people. These officials involved were truly too daring. They used all kinds of methods, sometimes even making one's hair stand up in anger. When the shocking truth hidden under the beautiful outer clothing was dug out, she couldn't help but be shocked. She wanted to fiercely beat these sinners and obtain justice for the people who had died unjustly and had been bullied. Big Ice Cube said that if he could be a bit faster, he could save the people from the abyss of suffering. Because he felt that he wasn't fast enough. But in the eyes of outsiders, for 2 months in a row, using thunder-like methods, iron-like blood, and unexpectedly digging out the worms hidden in the 100-year-old foundation, this was simply the largest purge of corrupt officials in the history of Sichuan. At the same time, it was the fastest and most thorough action against corruption. The officials were in a nightmare, the entire country was shocked, and the people were celebrating. But when Chu Qingyan looked at the hero that the people were praising, there was a layer of water in her eyes. Big Ice Cube, in these days, he had become thinner and thinner. Those eyes that were as bright as stars were like the coldest night in winter, deep without a bottom. No one knew what he was thinking right now. Being so focused on doing things, forgetting to eat and sleep, she was worried that there would be a day when Big Ice Cube's body would collapse. She did not understand why Big Ice Cube was in such a rush. He was in such a rush to finish these things when there was clearly a lot of time. She tightly hugged her arms. She suddenly felt that the night was becoming colder and colder. She was about to turn around when she heard footsteps behind her. Looking up, she saw that it was Ethereal. Ethereal was holding a bowl of steaming medicinal soup in his hand. He walked in front of Chu Qingyan and said in a serious tone, "Little Gongzi, this is the medicine for Master's internal injuries." Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Doesn't His Highness's internal injuries no longer need to take medicine and can be slowly recuperated? Ethereal shook his head. Originally, according to the previous medicine, Master could have recovered by this month. But because Master was so busy with state affairs and neglected to eat and sleep, his internal injuries have relapsed. In recent days, his breathing has become unstable, so this subordinate immediately went to brew the medicine. Chu Qingyan's heart clenched. Then, after drinking this medicine, will His Highness recover? As long as His Highness cooperates and is not so tired, and has a reasonable rest, he will recover in half a month. Ethereal replied after careful consideration. But both of them knew that this was impossible. Chapter 246. Ethereal, is there no other way? Chu Qingyan's eyes were filled with worry. She was afraid that if this continued, the Big Ice Cube would really fall sick. Ethereal shook his head. If there was, this subordinate would have already done it. Then this subordinate wouldn't be in such a terrible situation. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet anxiously. After pacing around twice, she suddenly thought of something and turned to Ethereal with a sly smile. "I have an idea. I just need something, but I know you have it." Ethereal was confused. Soon, Chu Qingyan took the medicine from his hands and made a scissors gesture at him. Then she walked into the Big Ice Cube's room. When Hua Ling saw her come in and the medicine in her hands, he understood and left with the staff in the room. Ever since they left Yangxia County, the Big Ice Cube had several staff members by his side. It was said that these people were the brains behind the scenes who had fought with him on the battlefield. Because the Big Ice Cube needed them, they rushed over. Chu Qingyan had always admired them, but these people didn't like her very much. Only she and Xiao Su were left in the room. The skinny figure was frowning as he wrote something under the candlelight. Chu Qingyan walked to his side with a bowl of medicine and said, "Take a rest first. Kong Ling said that your injuries have relapsed, so she brewed some medicine for you." Drink it while it's hot. Put it aside for now, Xiao Su said without looking up. Chu Qingyan knew that if he really put it aside, who knew when he would remember to drink the medicine. Thus, she took his pen and put the medicine bowl in front of him. She insisted, drink it first. You can do other things later. Your health is most important. Qingyan, don't mess around. Xiao Su's face stiffened as if he was about to get angry. Big Ice Cube rarely lost his temper at her, and it was the first time he yelled at her so harshly. Her anger was a little weak, but when she saw that he hadn't rested well recently and that there were faint green circles under his eyes, her tone immediately rose. You're the one who's messing around. In the past, when I was sick and injured, you told me that nothing was more important than my health and that I had to take my medicine on time. What about now? Not only did he ruin his own body, but he also refused to take any medicine. Was this the same as allowing the magistrate to do whatever he wanted but not allowing the commoners to do whatever they wanted? How can you be so overbearing? At the end of her speech, her voice was already sobbing. Xiao Su's anger, which had been stirred up because of his recent irritation, was extinguished by her tearful cries. In the end, he compromised. He took the bowl of soup from her hand and drank the medicine in one gulp. All right, you can rest assured. This prince did not forbid a commoner like you from lighting the lanterns. Xiao Su returned the empty bowl to her. Chu Qingyan saw that he was so obedient and her heart let out a sigh of relief. She checked the bowl and found that there really was not a single drop left. Then you can return the pen to this king now. Xiao Su spread out his hand with a helpless look in his eyes. It was a pity that what was in his hand was not a pen, but rather a pair of chopsticks. Xiao Su knit his brows. Qingyan, this king has already drunk the medicine, so you should return the pen. Did I say that I should give you the pen after you drank the medicine? Chu Qingyan blinked at him with an innocent expression. Xiao Su face-bombed. How could there be such a shameless person? But he really did not know what to do with her. Huang Yi served the dishes. Chu Qingyan did not care about his reproachful gaze as she clapped her hands and called out. He saw Huang Yi bring in a row of servants, all of them carrying exquisite dishes. They filled the table and then left in an orderly manner. Chu Qingyan turned to look at him with a smile. Big Ice Cube, everything is ready. You only owe me 2. This king isn't hungry. Xiao Su picked up another account book to check, as if he was no longer angry at her for taking the pen. Chu Qingyan was not angry at his rejection and shrugged. I haven't eaten dinner yet, but I'm not hungry either. It's a pity that these dishes are wasted. Before she could finish speaking, she felt a gust of wind pass by her. She turned around and saw that the person who said he wasn't hungry was already sitting at the table. Chu Qingyan's eyes flashed with a smug smile. Then she strode over and sat down beside him. I heard that this sea bass is a local specialty. You can't eat such delicious fish anywhere else. Big Ice Cube, come and try it. Chu Qingyan picked up a large piece of fish and placed it in his bowl. Then Chu Qingyan did the same thing, picking up all the dishes on the table. Soon, the bowl in front of Xiao Su was piled up like a mountain. Xiao Su was very helpless towards her methods, but after eating he also felt that his stomach was empty. He no longer resisted the little fellow's thoughts and ate in peace. Seeing that the Big Ice Cube was focused on eating, Chu Qingyan felt that she had finally achieved her goal and her heart relaxed. Very quickly, the meal was finished. Xiao Su stood up to return to the table, but just as he was about to move, he was pulled back. What kind of evil idea do you have now? No one could hear the doting and helpless tone in his voice. Haven't you heard of the saying, walk 100 steps after a meal and live to 99 years old? You just finished eating, how can you sit down so quickly? So, Chu Qingyan's water spirit eyes rippled with layers of smiles. Let's go for a walk. Xiao Su completely understood her thoughts. It seemed that she didn't intend to let him have a peaceful night. But even though he knew this, he still compromised once again. Outside, Chu Qingyan asked him to take her to the back of the mountain. Xiao Su didn't have any objections. He held her waist and flew through the forest. Soon, they landed on the top of the mountain. What a beautiful night! As soon as her feet touched the ground, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but exclaim. Although it was already winter and there were almost no traces of stars, the night sky didn't dim because of this. The crescent moon was bright and exceptionally silver. The whole world was covered in a layer of white gauze. The emotions that had been shrouding her heart were temporarily ignored because of the vastness of the world and the enchanting moonlight. Big ice block, it's not that this world doesn't have beautiful scenery, but we lack the eyes to discover beauty. Chu Qingyan turned around and said seriously. Xiao Su rubbed her head. He knew what she wanted to express. She didn't want him to bury his head in work all day. But little fellow, you don't understand. There are too many things in this world that are beyond one's control. Chu Qingyan pulled him to find a place to sit down. Big ice block, let's look at the night sky. In a closed space, we often feel depressed. But when we come out and blend into the world, we can find that the restricted thoughts are like the Ren and Du meridians are opened. You have a lot of fallacies. But listening to it, it was impossible to refute. Big ice block, how about I sing you a song? Chu Qingyan asked him on a whim. Xiao Su glanced at her. He knew that even if he refused, she would still sing. Then lie down. Chu Qingyan pushed him to lie down on the grass. Xiao Su had no choice but to follow her. When the two of them used the ground as their bed and the sky as their scenery, a clear and pure song sounded in his ears. Chapter 247. Twinkle, 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 the sky is full of little stars hanging in the sky and shining like millions of little eyes. Once summer passed, the thousands of stars disappeared. At this time, there were no clouds for thousands of miles, and the moon was in the sky. The breeze blew gently, and on the ground, flowers and plants swayed in the wind. Although the night on the mountain was very cold, he didn't know why. When he heard the little fellow's song, he seemed to feel that the sky was really full of little eyes, and his mind suddenly went blank. What song is this? Xiao Su softened his voice and asked after she finished singing. It's called Little Star. Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of something and took out a shining white thing from her lapel. Then she held it up and smiled to the person beside her. Although there are no stars tonight, there is a star in my hand now. This is what you gave me, so I invite you to look at the stars together. Xiao Su shifted his gaze to the fluorite in her hand. It was the birthday gift he gave to the little fellow. At this time, it was blooming with soft light in her hand, as if she was holding a real star in her hand. You're presenting Buddha with borrowed flowers. Xiao Su retracted his gaze. He faintly felt that his eyelids were a little heavy, but he still forced them open, trying to wake up his groggy head. Chu Qingyan grinned at him. Anyway, you've already given this flower to me, so the ownership is mine. I have the right to possess, use, benefit, and dispose of it. And what kind of Buddha do you want to be? Maitreya Buddha? Victorious fighting Buddha? Envoy of the cleansing altar? He had always allowed a certain someone's blabbermouth to continue. But after she said a series of words, he felt that his head was even heavier, and his eyelids were about to close. But the person beside his ear suddenly fell into a monologue. But the Maitreya Buddha is always smiling, and you always have a straight face, which doesn't match you at all. Envoy of the cleansing altar is a foodie, and it's more appropriate to describe the retired emperor. The victorious fighting Buddha is a little similar to you, punishing evil and promoting good, and not showing mercy to bad people. He loves the people like his own children, and your martial arts are excellent, and you're wise and can distinguish right from wrong. It's a pity he's lively and active, but you're always dull. You're obviously a good young man of 20 years old, okay? Xiao Su felt that this little girl was becoming bolder and bolder. He wanted to raise his hand and give her a chestnut, but he was already powerless. Even his thoughts were slowly dispersing. Finally, he fell into the endless darkness. His ear was still the little fellow's nagging, but it was like a lullaby that made him close his eyes peacefully. Forget it, I won't talk about you, or you'll say that I'm impolite again. Chu Qingyan heard no sound in her ear, and thought that the big ice cube was ignoring her again, so she had to give up. But she quickly pulled herself together. Big ice cube, I'll sing you another song. Just as she turned her head, her smile stopped at her lips. Chu Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief. The big ice cube finally fell asleep. Tonight, she found ethereal to get a packet of enchensin. She wanted to add all of it to the medicinal soup, but she was worried that the big ice cube would be suspicious, so she added a little to the medicine, some to the food, and her clothes. Ethereal said that the medicine was long-lasting, but it didn't take effect quickly. So in order to avoid the big ice cube's suspicion, she kidnapped him to admire the night sky. She helped him tidy his clothes, then sat up, hugged her knees, and leaned against his side. Her expression was not as happy as before. Big Ice Cube, although you're asleep, there's a song that I've always wanted to sing to you. It's good that you're asleep. With a smile on her lips, Chu Qingyan's gaze fell on the person beside her. The silver mask emitted a soft silver light under the moonlight. The lively song sounded again in the mountains. Crying in the crowd, you just want to turn into a transparent color, you'll never do it again, dreams hurt or moved, you've already decided, you bear it quietly, tightly clenching yesterday in your fist. And the sweeter the memory, the more hurtful it is, the more it leaves in your palm, densely packed deep and shallow cuts. Since you were young, you have never experienced what kinship is. Perhaps before Xiao Ran was born, Sichuan Emperor still cared about you. But with the birth of Xiao Ran, your status was replaced. In other words, Xiao Ran got the fatherly love you never had. You're not really happy, your smile is just the protective color you wear, you decide not to hate, you also decide not to love, put your soul, locked in a shell that is forever locked, the world laughs, so you laugh with the group, when survival is the rule, it's not your choice, so you hold back your tears, fluttering and stumbling along. But for so many years, you never gave up your desire for kinship. You resigned yourself to adversity. You worked hard for opportunities to let everyone see your efforts. You were not a prince with a noble status but nothing. But what was the result? Empress Liang pressured you step by step, Sichuan Emperor mercilessly used you. Every misunderstanding, every injustice, you silently bore it all by yourself. It has been the same for 20 years. But no matter how strong a person is, no matter how patient a person is, there will come a day when he will not have the strength to move forward. When he was punished to kneel in the rain all night, what he waited for was not the truth, but the bell was imprisoned. When he walked out of the prison and entered the palace, there was no comfort, but a new mission. When he said goodbye before he left, he closed the door and did not see him. The mountain that had always stood tall as if no one could easily push it down was finally crushed by the last straw. You're not really happy, your injury never refuses, it completely heals, I stand on your left side, but it's like we're separated by the Milky Way. Could it be that you really hold regrets until you're old? If it were anyone else, they would have long been tortured to the point of collapse. But you just choose to swallow this bitterness alone and continue to move forward with the mission. Big Ice Cube, how can you do this? You've always been thinking about others, but you don't care about yourself? Your heart is clearly so warm and tender, but others slander you for being hard-hearted, cold-blooded, ruthless, and ruthless. You clearly deserve more praise and praise, but all you get is abuse and slander. You've already walked so hard on this road. Why do those people still want to force you to a dead end and squeeze out your last bit of energy? You deserve true happiness. You should take off your clothes, the protective color you're wearing. Why did you lose it? You're still being punished. Can you just let the sadness go? It's all over now. Start living again. Big Ice Cube, I hope that one day, you can live for yourself. You can really live a light life with nothing to do. You won't be bound by those so-called responsibilities, the so-called things you should do, and the so-called things you have to do. A string of tears flowed out of her big smart eyes. Big Ice Cube, how can you not make people feel sorry for you? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but reach out and hug him, sobbing. Big Ice Cube, I know, I understand. I want you to be happy. Chapter 248. Chu Qingyan quietly leaned on Xiao Su's shoulder. His shoulder didn't look broad, but it made people feel very at ease. Big Ice Cube, go to sleep. Have a good sleep, and you will have the energy to do things tomorrow. She pursed her lips and closed her eyes. The cold wind wantonly brushed the black hair beside her ears. The world was very quiet, so quiet that they seemed to hear each other's breathing. How she hoped that at this moment, she could keep it for a lifetime, and not be disturbed by the rising and setting of the sun. However, this scene could only be kept in her memory. After a moment, she straightened up. The softness and pity in her eyes had been replaced by firmness and solemnity. She turned her head to look at the dark place. "Come out." Under the shadow of the tree, a figure walked out. It was Turin. "Little princess, has master fallen asleep?" Turin slowly approached. "Yes, you take his highness back first." She stood up and ordered him. "What about little princess?" Turin carried the person on his back and turned his head to ask with some doubts. "The night view here is very beautiful. I want to stay a little longer." "Don't worry, I have already informed Jean Exin. He should be here soon." Chu Qingyan smiled at him. Turin nodded. Stepping on the cold moon and cool wind, he quickly went back the way he came. The late winter weather in this place was the most peculiar of the 4 seasons. Because it had winter nights, spring mornings, summer noon, and autumn evening. You could experience the 4 seasons in one day. And this was the coldest time. When Higashio Motetsu walked to the hillside, he saw the little fellow sitting on a tree branch with her arms crossed. Her feet were hanging down, and one was swaying back and forth. From his point of view, there was a crescent moon outlined behind her. The light gathered in the corner of her eyes touched the moonlight and was instantly lit up. It was so dazzling that people didn't dare to look directly at it. "You are here." Chu Qingyan lowered her head and saw the person in the moonlight. There was no surprise in her tone. "You blew the bamboo whistle. What business do you have with this young master?" Just now, when he heard the bamboo whistle, he immediately rushed over, thinking that the little lass had encountered something. But when he saw that she was safe and sound, his heart was at ease and he returned to his usual carefree self. Chu Qingyan glanced at him. Her tone was no longer as cheerful as before. "Dong Ting, do you still remember the analysis you gave me about the current situation in Sichuan?" "Oh, you're talking about that? I'm just saying it casually. Just listen to your heart." Dong Ting Wangyue leaped up and sat beside her, saying casually. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he felt that something was amiss. He raised his brows and looked at her. "You wouldn't have woken this young master up from his sleep so late at night just to make this young master analyze that boring court situation with you, right?" No, this young master isn't that bored." Chu Qingyan ignored his protest and continued speaking. "I've always suspected that the Sichuan emperor sending my lord to the Fuli mountain range was only one of the missions. There were other missions as well. However, my lord has never revealed anything. I've been looking for it this entire time. It's normal to have a secret mission. Don't think too much about it." Higashio Motetsu leaned against the tree trunk and closed his eyes to rest. "It's not that I'm thinking too much. It's just that I subconsciously feel that this secret mission will cause great harm to my lord." The worry in Chu Qingyan's words made Higashio Motetsu open one eye. "So, before, I didn't have a clue. But now, I think I know what this secret mission is." Chu Qingyan didn't say anything conclusive, but she felt that her guess was not far from the truth. "What is it?" Higashio Motetsu didn't care at first, but it was rare to see the little girl so serious. He couldn't help but sit up straight and listen attentively. Chu Qingyan raised her head to look at the bright moon. Her voice was a little sad and she was gnashing her teeth. "Purge the vermin and clean up the atmosphere." Higashio Motetsu frowned in disbelief. "Are you sure?" Chu Qingyan didn't say anything and nodded. Tonight, when she sent the medicine into the meeting room, she saw a map placed on the corner of the table. It was a map of the entire Sichuan Empire. This was not surprising. But what surprised her was that on the map, with the capital as the starting point, the red line extended and circled the places they had visited in the past few days. But this was not the main point. What caught her attention the most was that on the route to Fuli Mountain, there were many surrounding counties and towns. But they didn't need to pass through these places at all. In other words, the places they had been through during this time were not on the route to Fuli Mountain. Instead, they had been taking detours and wandering around the towns. But they could have reached Fuli Mountain directly. Why did they have to take so many detours and dig out so many corrupt officials? In fact, it was not on the way at all. She suddenly had a bold guess. The reason Big Ice Cube was so bold and decisive in his actions, acting so decisively and swiftly to punish the officials of Xixian, was actually because there was someone behind him directing him. Furthermore, every time a case was solved, the court could quickly take over. Did that mean that Jingdo had long been prepared? In the whole world, only the Sichuan emperor had such great power and could order the Big Ice Cube. So, the secret mission was to punish evil and eliminate the traitors. If it was really as she thought, then everything that had happened along the way could be explained. But this secret mission gave her an illusion of suffocation. This young master thinks that you may have guessed correctly. Higashio Motetsu stroked his chin and nodded. Then he praised, "Little girl, you are quite smart." Chu Qingyan did not feel that this praise was anything to be happy about. Her mood was unusually heavy now. Because if she guessed correctly, what awaited them was probably a mountain of knives and a sea of fire. In the past 2 months, which one of those caught was not a big maggot. But if they could become a maggot, how could they not have some power? How could they not have some ability? The Big Ice Cube was too ruthless. When they recovered, they would do their best to take revenge and kill. No wonder the Big Ice Cube said that there was not enough time and that it would be too late. Everything made sense now. Punishing evil and eliminating evil was a matter of course. But the person who stood out would become the target of public criticism. A centipede died but did not fall down. When those people came to take revenge, they would not rest until they were dead. One batch after another, it was simply too much to deal with. And the person who caused all this would enjoy the fruits of the Big Ice Cube's hard work and could sit back and relax. Only the Big Ice Cube would have to bear the evil intentions from all sides. A trace of hatred flashed in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she hated someone so much. Even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs. But I saw an incomparably cruel and heartless father. No, he is not worthy of being a father at all. Chapter 249. Faced with the little girl's sudden resentment, Higashio Motetsu gave a sigh. This is a matter between father and son. What can you do about it? Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was silent. Her hands were tightly clenched on her knees. Higashio Motetsu was right. She couldn't interfere in the matter between the two of them. Actually, the reason why she was so angry was mostly because she was blaming herself. She didn't have anything, she didn't have any ability to help Big Ice Block at all, so she was mostly complaining about herself. The little girl suddenly became silent and Higashio Motetsu began to reflect on whether he had said the wrong thing. When his eyes fell on her, he could feel a strong sense of loneliness around her. Higashio Motetsu didn't like this feeling. The little girl should be happy and cheerful. Being sad and sentimental was not suitable for her. Just as he was thinking about how to enlighten her, the branches suddenly shook and he was already under the tree. Dong Ting, it's too late, I have to go back. Chu Qingyan looked up at him. The sense of loneliness around her seemed to be an illusion. Why did you come looking for this young master tonight? Don't you have a lot of people around you? Higashio Motetsu looked at her with bright eyes, successfully making her stay. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and thought for a bit before revealing a smile. Perhaps it's easier to talk to you about this. Although she got along well with Hua Ling and the others, she felt that she had yet to enter their circle. If there was a day when Big Ice Block was no longer around, then their circle would exclude her. And the person in front of her gave off a feeling of being both good and evil, making it hard for her to see through him. But sometimes she felt that he was worthy of her trust. The people below him didn't hide their trust in him, and the half-defeated smile on their faces made Higashio Motetsu's heart tremble. When he came back to his senses, she had already walked far away. He looked at the petite figure that was getting further and further away, and a complicated look appeared in his eyes. This was the first time he had played the role of eavesdropper, and this feeling was unexpectedly heartwarming. If it were other girls at her age, they would be thinking about rouge, face powder, or pretty clothes. At such a young age, she had a meticulous mind. What she thought of was the overall situation that even an adult could not compare to. He suddenly felt pity for her, but his plan could not be changed. He had not obtained that item yet. Therefore, he didn't tell the little girl that they would encounter Xiao Su's enemies in at least half a month. This was the information he had received. However, due to their different standpoints, he could not tell her. Higashio Motetsu raised his head to look at the crescent moon that was covered by clouds. His eyes also seemed to be covered by layers of mist. A handsome young man who was both righteous and evil, as clear as a jade tree facing the wind. When Chu Qingyan walked out of the back of the mountain, there was already a figure standing upright under the tree in front of her. It seemed that he had been waiting for a long time. Master! When Jin Xen saw the person walking towards them under the moonlight, he bowed his head in greeting. Jin Xen, do you have anything you want to ask me? Chu Qingyan stood in front of him and looked at him as she asked. Jin Xen raised his head and said seriously, what does Master want Jin Xen to ask? Chu Qingyan choked. She originally thought that he would have doubts about her purpose of staying here alone. Unfortunately, she had underestimated him. When she looked into his eyes, she realized that this person actually knew what to ask and what not to ask. It's nothing, I was just asking, she said half-heartedly. When Jin Xen heard this, he did not ask any more questions. How's your martial arts now? As the two of them walked back, Chu Qingyan asked again. If she remembered correctly, when they were in the dungeon, she found out that he knew martial arts. But when they were in the dungeon, there was no place for him to use his martial arts, so she never had a chance to see his martial arts. She suddenly thought of it tonight, so she casually asked. It's no problem for one person to deal with 10 normal large men. Jin Xen considered it before replying. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up. It seemed like she had picked up a treasure. Have you competed with Hualing before? She asked again. I won't lose within 30 moves against Hualing, and Turin won within 20 moves. Jin Xen thought about how Hualing and the others had dragged him to the devil's training and his expression slightly changed. However, it had to be said that the reason why he could improve so quickly was because of their training. Chu Qingyan did not notice the change in Jin Xen's expression and felt a bit happy. Big Ice Cube had said before that Hualing and Turin were the strongest out of the fierce cavalry and he had personally taught them. If Jin Xen could exchange so many moves with them without losing, then at least when there was danger, with Jin Xen here, she would not be a burden to Big Ice Cube. Alright, continue to work hard. Chu Qingyan was naturally referring to Hualing and the others' training. Yes. Jin Xen replied with some difficulty. It seemed like he would have to slowly walk down this long road. Very soon, Chu Qingyan and Jin Xen returned to the courtyard. This was the other courtyard of the local magistrate. When the magistrate knew of their arrival, he had already prepared a place for them to stay. No one declined as they moved in. It was easy to invite Buddha but hard to send Buddha away. At this time, Big Ice Cube's table was filled with the achievements of the county in recent years. If the magistrate wanted to use flattery to make Big Ice Cube go easy on them, it would be impossible. When they passed through the corridor, there were rows of guards patrolling. When she walked to the door of Big Ice Cube's room, Hualing was personally guarding the door. Little Princess Fei. Hualing bowed to her. Has His Highness already fallen asleep? Chu Qingyan stopped in front of him and asked in a low voice. He's already asleep. Hualing nodded and said with a grateful expression, many thanks to Little Princess Fei for helping out this time. Otherwise, Master would have to stay up all night to deal with official matters. You're too polite. I also can't stand watching His Highness' actions in the past few days. I just hope that he doesn't find that I drugged him when he wakes up, otherwise. She shook her head. There was no need to think about the consequences, it would be very tragic. Hualing was amused by her. Little Princess Fei, it's late, you should go back and rest. Master has subordinates here, nothing will happen. She wanted to go in and take a look at Big Ice Cube, but after thinking about it, she gave up. He had taken so long to fall down after using so much medicine. If she went in and woke him up, it wouldn't be worth it. Chu Qingyan was about to turn and leave, but then she thought of something. She stopped and turned around to ask him, Hualing, has anything strange happened recently? Or have there been any movements on the way here? Her question was very vague, but Hualing understood as soon as he heard it. He shook his head. Everything is normal, nothing has happened. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was still a bit worried. You should increase your vigilance. This subordinate understands. Little Princess Fei, don't worry. Hualing seriously replied. Chu Qingyan nodded and left. She hoped that this wasn't the calm before the storm. Chapter 250. After Chu Qingyan left, Hualing increased his vigilance. He looked around and patrolled as usual. At this time, a subordinate hurriedly came in. Sir Hualing, Sir Water Spirit just sent a letter saying that there are strange movements in the capital. A large group of people is leaving the city and it's very likely that they're heading in our direction. Hualing frowned. I understand. When Master wakes up tomorrow, I will report this matter. The subordinate retreated. Hualing suddenly remembered what the little princess had suddenly asked, and his heart was filled with worry. Master's recent actions had offended too many people's interests. These people would make a move sooner or later. The night was dark and it was destined to be a restless night. Inside the moon hall, Consort Yu was sitting in a chair with a letter in her hand. After reading it, her entire person was glowing. Master, did something good happen? Mama Rong was holding a lamp as she walked over. When she saw the deep smile on her master's face, she couldn't help asking with a smile. Consort Yu casually folded the letter and turned to smile at her with a raised brow. The letter just came saying that our people have arrived and the people Lu Shi sent to kill Xiao Su are already on their way. Also, it's not just these two groups of people. It should be said that the people who have grudges against Xiao Su have already begun to gather. Nyang Nyang, this really is good news. Mama Rong clapped her hands. Like this, even if the King of England has wings, he won't be able to escape. Imperial concubine Moon gracefully stood up. The thin tassels on her waist touched each other, emitting a clear and melodious sound. Her lips curled up in a cold smile, like a cruel blade. In the past, Xiao Su had the fierce storm cavalry in his hands and no one could touch him. But now, with so many enemies, even if they take turns fighting him, the fierce storm cavalry will be exhausted sooner or later. Then, now that the last barrier has been broken, what ability does Xiao Su have left to fight against these death warriors and assassins? Consort Yu raised her hand and stroked her fingertips. A blood-red light was reflected in her eyes, and a trace of killing intent flashed past her eyes. Then this old servant will congratulate your highness in advance for pulling out the thorn in your side and having no more worries. Nanny Rong congratulated her with a smile. Consort Yu smiled. She didn't say anything, but the murderous intent in her eyes grew stronger. Xiao Su, this consort will await the day of your death in the capital. When that time came, she wanted to see what kind of face Empress Liang, who had been unyielding for decades, would have to compete with her for the position of the Eastern Palace. Deep winter, bitter cold, austere. Xiao Su woke up and found himself lying on the bed. He carefully recalled everything that had happened last night and finally got up with a frown. Big Ice Cube, you're awake. Hurry up and wash up. I made you a nutritious breakfast this morning. A clear voice sounded in his room. He didn't need to guess to know who it was. When he sat down at the dining table, before Xiao Su could mention what had happened last night, someone had already spoken up. Big Ice Cube, you fell asleep halfway through enjoying the scenery with me last night. It looks like you've really been too tired these days. In the future, please don't destroy your body like this. What was the meaning of preemptive strike? It meant that she had taken the initiative to bring up the matter and resolve the other party's doubts. That way, the other party wouldn't bring it up again. Even if they had some suspicions, they wouldn't pursue the matter. Xiao Su turned to look at her, his eyes unfathomable. Chu Qingyan's smiling eyes suddenly froze. She seemed to feel guilty and immediately changed the topic. Come, this is soy milk. I had someone bring over some graphite. Even though it's not as finely ground as ours, it's still pretty good. Xiao Su withdrew his gaze. Even though he felt that there was something fishy about what had happened last night, he didn't have any evidence to prove that it had anything to do with the little fellow. Moreover, after a long sleep, he was indeed much more energetic, so he didn't argue with her about this matter. In front of him was a bowl of cream-colored sticky soup. It was the soy milk that the little fellow had mentioned. It sounded like something new. Also, here are some mixed grain steamed buns, meat buns, and deep-fried dough sticks. Chu Qingyan pushed the things in front of him and said with a face full of treasures, "This is what I learned to make from Huang. Quickly try my cooking. What do you think?" Xiao Su picked up a steamed bun and took a bite. The texture was not bad. Facing the little fellow who was waiting for his praise, he didn't satisfy her wishes. Instead, he said lightly, "In the future, you can leave these things to Huang Yi. You don't have to do it yourself." Without waiting for his praise, Chu Qingyan felt a little frustrated. "I don't have anything to do usually. Now you want to deprive me of my hobbies. Isn't that too cruel?" "Don't have anything to do?" Xiao Su raised his voice slightly. "There." Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a little guilty. "You know how to play the zither, go, calligraphy, and painting?" Xiao Su looked at her indifferently. "The skills learned by a lady from a noble family. I'm just a country girl. There's no need for that." She immediately waved her hand. When they were in the capital, Big Ice Cube hired a music workshop teacher to teach her how to play the zither. 3 days later, her fingers were bandaged like carrots. After Big Ice Cube knew about it, he dismissed the teacher. Chess, calligraphy, and painting, she occasionally learned a little from Big Ice Cube. However, during that time, they didn't have much peace in the capital, so she didn't learn it for a long time. Looking at the little fellow's frightened expression, Xiao Su's eyes flashed with a slight smile. "Then go practice martial arts with Turin and the others." Chu Qingyan shook her head and said awkwardly, "Turin and the others are responsible for guarding the road. It's already hard enough. I don't want to cause trouble for them." Xiao Su knew that she was just making excuses. However, just as she didn't like it and didn't care, he wouldn't really force her to do anything. "Then what do you want to do? You're always saying that you're bored and that there's grass growing on your head. If this prince hears you say that again, this prince will throw you to Turin. Practice martial arts and sword, and don't bargain." "So fierce?" Chu Qingyan thought for a moment, then raised her hand and said, "I have something I want to do." "Speak." "I want to be your temporary housekeeper." Chu Qingyan giggled. "Nonsense." Xiao Su immediately rejected. "Big Ice Cube, how can you be so stupid? Why can't I be your housekeeper? You have to give me a reason. Otherwise, I won't accept it." Chu Qingyan protested. "What can you do?" Xiao Su was very doubtful of her ability. As soon as her voice fell, she lightly pursed her red lips, revealing her shallow dimples. "I can supervise you to eat, drink medicine, and rest. I'll be like a timer or a memo. When you forget to eat and sleep, I'll remind you on time what to do. How about it? I'm very intelligent." Only then did Xiao Su realize that she had been beating around the bush for so long because she wanted to change her way of taking care of him. He was a little moved. Clearly, the little fellow should be enjoying the care of her parents in a greenhouse, but she had to suffer the hardship of being homeless with him. He suddenly felt that he owed her. Xiao Su was silent for a moment. Just as he was about to speak to her, the sound of urgent footsteps sounded. Chapter 251. The two of them looked at the door at the same time and saw Hualing walk in with a serious expression. He walked in front of his master. "Master, the guards that were patrolling outside were attacked by unknown black-clothed people. Although there were no casualties, this matter is a warning to us. I'm afraid there are still many enemies hiding in the dark." Xiao Su's cold eyes turned to the side with a serious expression. Hualing had already passed on Water Spirit's message to him this morning. He had guessed that what should come would come. It was just that it came a bit earlier than he expected. Strengthen the guards and find out where these people came from. Xiao Su's lips were cold as he pursed them into a line. "Yes." Hualing responded. Hualing seemed to have just thought of something. "Master, do you want to delay tomorrow's trip?" "No, everything will be as usual." Xiao Su calmly said. "Yes, this subordinate will arrange it now." Hualing retreated. As soon as Hualing left, Turin came in. Chu Qingyan watched as Big Ice Block left the dining table and moved to the desk. Her eyes fell on the breakfast that had not been touched and she gave a soft sigh. She wanted to delay Big Ice Block and watch him finish his breakfast before letting him continue to deal with the matter. But she knew that she couldn't. The matter was urgent now and Big Ice Block had to quickly deal with it. Otherwise, the enemies hidden in the dark would suddenly appear and give them a head-on blow. If she had not guessed this mysterious task, she would not have cared about this little assassination. But now, she knew that this was just the beginning. This was the first step of the enemy's investigation. They wanted to know how many people they had. So she knew why Big Ice Block did not change the plan for tomorrow. If he changed the plan because of this investigation, the other side would know that they did not have enough people and did not dare to move forward. Then what awaited them would be a full-force attack. If they moved out tomorrow, the other side would have some scruples. As long as they had scruples, it would give them a buffer to mobilize their people. She silently drank her soy milk as Big Ice Block and Turin discussed how to deal with the county magistrate. Embezzling public funds, embezzling disaster relief funds, the people involved. Chu Qingyan held the bowl with both hands and was in a daze for a while. The soy milk in her hands was already cold. It touched her fingertips and was a bit cold. She did not know why she suddenly felt a faint unease about tomorrow's trip. Night quickly fell, but the courtyard was still brightly lit, as if it was daytime. The guards standing in every corner of the courtyard were as upright as pine trees, protecting the entire courtyard. It was impregnable, and even a fly would not be able to fly in. In the distance, someone stood on the hillside and looked down at the courtyard below. Sir, Xiao Su's departure tomorrow is unchanged. Should we make a move tonight or hold back for now? A black-clothed subordinate stepped forward and asked. The man with the black bamboo hat stared at the courtyard below. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Right now, we don't know how many people Xiao Su has with him, so we shouldn't act rashly. This man is a war god, so there must be a lot of people following him." In another place, there was also a group of people secretly monitoring the courtyard where Chu Qingyan and the others were. "Guardian, they are heavily guarded tonight. If we try to assassinate them, it will be very disadvantageous for us." The woman in white palace clothes discussed with the person in front of her. The woman standing in front of the attic was dressed in white. Her face was covered with a white veil. Her waist was smooth and there were bright moons in her ears. Just by looking at her appearance, one would feel that she was very graceful. But when one saw her pair of lifeless eyes, they only felt that she was very gloomy and could not help but tremble. Since we want to know how many people they have, it's very simple. Capture the county magistrate who is in prison and torture him to see if he will confess. But I think he must be very sullen in his heart after being investigated by Xiao Su. I think he will be very willing to cooperate with us. The woman in white smiled coldly and there was a deep murderous intent in her eyes. "Guardian, you are wise. I will send people to the prison to rescue him. Go!" The Moon Palace sect had not issued a death warrant for many years. Now that they had reappeared in Jianghu, they did not expect to assassinate a prince of a country. The Moon Palace sect, which had deviated from the orthodoxy, was already boiling with passion. They loved to do things that people could not imagine. So the Suicide Squad accepted the mission. Who would have thought that the Suicide Squad of the Moon Palace sect was a group of weak women? No, they were women who looked weak but were actually vicious in their bones. The woman in white took out her long sword and stroked the blade fondly. She looked as if she was treating her partner. She could not wait to let her sword drink blood to quench its thirst. The woman in white put away her sword and turned to go back to her room from the balcony. The women of the Moon Palace sect standing on both sides bowed slightly to see her off. From tomorrow onwards, a bloody battle was about to begin. But in the woods not far from the courtyard, a cloaked person stood facing the wind. The black-cloaked person who had kidnapped the 3 killers of heaven, earth, and human at the first and had also appeared in this county. "How is it?" The voice was low, and it was hard to tell whether it was a man or a woman. "Master, our men went to investigate just now and found that there are 2 unknown forces stationed around the courtyard where the King of England is staying. They must be targeting the King of England. The black-cloaked subordinate reported the information he had just received. Oh! The voice was drawn out, and he seemed to be surprised. It seems that the King of England has made a lot of enemies. His Majesty has made the right move. The King of England has become a trapped beast. The cloaked person said in a low voice, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. After a pause, the cloaked person spoke again. Let's wait and see. With these people around, it won't do us any harm. We might even be able to reap the benefits. Master is right. Maybe we can secretly stab them. If the King of England dies because of this, they won't be able to trace it back to us. The black-cloaked subordinate smiled sinisterly. Smart. The cloaked person stood with his hands behind his back. The cold wind made his cloak flutter. It was gloomy and austere. On a crooked tree, a purple figure reclined on a branch. He looked at the dark night sky, and his eyes flashed. No one knew what he was thinking. A figure silently appeared under the tree. Young master, as you expected, there are at least 3 groups of people gathered in the courtyard where Xiao Su is staying tonight. The subordinate, Xuanxi Zimo, said with admiration. When have my predictions ever been wrong? Higashio Motetsu said lazily. By the way, young master, I saw the people from the assassination group. It seems that the palace lord has handed the assassination token to Guardian Ju. Xuanxi Zimo was a little surprised. After all, the assassination group hadn't appeared in Jianghu for many years. Dongting Wangyu changed her posture and yawned. What's so strange about that? Guardian Ju has been cultivating in seclusion for the past few years. She just happened to have such a great opportunity to practice as soon as she came out. How could she miss it? It had to be said that Xiao Su was really surrounded by enemies this time. Chapter 252. The next morning, everyone had already packed their luggage and loaded it into the horse carriages. Chu Qingyan walked out of the room and looked at everyone in an orderly manner. Her uneasy state of mind relaxed a little. Your Highness. Chu Qingyan heard the greetings of the crowd as she looked in the direction of the sound. She saw a tall and slender figure standing on the steps in front of the corridor. From her angle, she could only see his long black hair, his exquisite black robes, and his fair and slender fingers under the black sleeves. His pinkish fingertips glowed under the sunlight, making people unable to look away. Although he was beautiful and charming, she could clearly see that the clothes he was wearing today were different from usual. It seemed to be a little more sharp and clean. In the past, he would at most have a piece of jade hanging on his waist as an ornament. But today, she saw that he was wearing a jet-black sword on his waist. It was as if a sword was meant to be placed in that position. Xiao Su felt her gaze and turned to look at her. Qingyan, come here. Chu Qingyan returned to her senses and saw that Big Ice Cube's gaze had landed on her. She immediately walked over. Big Ice Cube, why did you call me? Xiao Su looked at her deeply. She did not understand the meaning behind his gaze. Then she heard him say, this prince will be handling a lot of official business in the horse carriage today. In order to prevent your presence from disturbing this prince has asked Qing Yi to prepare another horse carriage for you. What? Disturbing? Chu Qingyan thought she must have heard wrongly. Usually, she would jump around in the horse carriage for so long, but this Big Ice Cube never said anything. Why did he suddenly chase her out of the horse carriage today? She was about to open her mouth to refute, but Xiao Su had already raised his hand to stop her. This matter is settled. This prince will not change his mind. If you need anything on the road, feel free to ask Huang Yi, Qing Yi, and the others. When his voice fell, Xiao Su was already on the large horse carriage that the two of them usually sat in. Chu Qingyan looked at the curtain that had just fallen and felt a bit depressed. Such a spacious horse carriage, it was too big for 5 or 6 people. Why did Big Ice Cube suddenly make this decision? No, she had to ask clearly. But when she walked to the horse carriage, she was stopped by Huo Ling. Huo Ling, what are you doing? Chu Qingyan raised an eyebrow. Huo Ling's expression was a bit troubled, but when he looked at the horse carriage, he immediately said with a straight face, Little Princess Fei, this is master's orders. This subordinate can only follow orders. Chu Qingyan felt something wasn't right when she heard this. She suppressed the unhappiness and grievance in her heart. She wanted to find some clues from Big Ice Cube's strange actions today, but no matter how hard she thought, she could not figure out what Big Ice Cube's arrangement meant. And at this time, another horse carriage came to her side. Qingyi jumped off the horse carriage and bowed to her before saying, "Little Gongzi, please get on the horse carriage." Chu Qingyan looked at Hualing and then looked at the silent horse carriage. She could only stomp her feet before jumping onto Qingyi's horse carriage. When everyone was on the horse carriage, it started to move. After walking for a while, Chu Qingyan looked at the horse carriage that was just as well decorated as the previous one. She felt something was wrong the more she thought about it. Chu Qingyan pulled open the curtain of the carriage and called Hualing over. "Little Gongzi, what orders do you have?" Hualing rode over on his horse. "I want to see eldest Gongzi. Help me pass on the message." Chu Qingyan said with a smile. Hualing was a bit troubled. "Little Gongzi, master is handling official matters right now and has ordered that unrelated people are not allowed to disturb him." Chu Qingyan's eyes narrowed when she heard this. She said angrily, "Hualing, look clearly. Is this Gongzi an unrelated person?" Hualing coughed when he heard this and realized he had said something wrong. He immediately nodded. "Little Gongzi, please wait. This subordinate will pass on the message." Then he slipped away. Even though the atmosphere on the road was a bit strange, when they saw the little princess and Hualing fight, Turin, Ethereal, and the others couldn't help but laugh. However, Hualing rolled his eyes at each of them. Chu Qingyan had been quietly waiting in the horse carriage, but after waiting for a long time, Hualing did not come back. She felt a bit impatient and asked Mu Ling. Only then did she know that Hualing had been punished by Big Ice Cube to scout the road. The reason was that he had done something he knew. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head. What kind of crime was this? But Hualing had been punished and no one else was willing to pass on the message for her. Therefore, Chu Qingyan decided to personally ask the person sitting in the horse carriage in front of her. "Jin Xin." Chu Qingyan lifted the curtain and called out to the person sitting in the driver's seat. "Master, is there something you need?" Jin Xin drove the horse carriage very smoothly. It made Chu Qingyan think that he had been a carriage driver before he lost his memories. It was just that he was too young, so she gave up on this idea. "Catch up to eldest Gongzi's horse carriage. I have something to say to him," Chu Qingyan ordered. Since the mountain was not coming, then she would go. Jin Xin immediately responded when he heard this. He cracked the whip on the horse's back and the horse's speed suddenly increased. Chu Qingyan finally felt the difference between her own people and outsiders. Jin Xin was one of her people, so he would only listen to her orders. But Hualing and the others would only listen to Big Ice Cube. Once something happened between her and Big Ice Cube, they would run the fastest. The horse carriage quickly caught up to the horse carriage in front. Chu Qingyan lifted the curtain and looked at the horse carriage beside her. She said in a pitiful voice, "Your Highness, are you angry with me? Did I do something wrong?" Xiao Su, who was reading the letter, heard the voice outside. His fingers paused for a moment, but he quickly continued reading. The little fellow would stop after tossing and turning for a while. The best way to deal with her was to ignore her. But the person outside seemed to be persevering. "Your Highness, is it because Qingyan put a drug in your medicine and food that you're not willing to pay attention to me? I swear, I only did it once and I won't do it again. So please forgive me, I was wrong." Chu Qingyan turned to test him. She actually did not have much confidence. "You've grown wings? You even dare to plot against Ben Wang?" Xiao Su did not think that she would confess without being pressed. He was a bit angry and a bit amused. Finally hearing Big Ice Cube's voice, Chu Qingyan was instantly overjoyed. She did not care what kind of attitude he would have after knowing this. It was fine as long as she achieved her goal. "I know I was wrong. Let me get on the horse carriage and I'll tell you who my accomplices are." Ethereal, who was watching from the side, suddenly shivered. The little princess consort was willing to do anything to get on the horse carriage and even sold him out. Turin also felt a layer of cold sweat on his back. As expected, the ancient people said only women and villains were hard to raise. Chapter 253. When Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she heard a cold voice from inside the carriage. Ben Wang doesn't need to guess to know who your accomplice is. You will be punished to stay in the carriage and reflect on your mistakes. Just as he finished speaking, the carriage passed her carriage. Soon, a group of guards squeezed between the two carriages. No matter how skilled Jin Xian was at driving, he could not pass those guards. Chu Qingyan was left to sulk as she looked at the slowly moving carriage between the guards. She thought that if this was the modern era, this carriage would probably spray exhaust all over her face. What? Reflect on your mistakes, reflect on your mistakes, reflect on your mistakes? It was all an excuse for the big ice cube to not let her get on the carriage. But even though she was angry, she quickly calmed down. She had just been probing, but she hadn't thought that the big ice cube would really not let her get on the carriage as she expected. The big ice cube's actions this morning definitely had a purpose. But what was it? Chu Qingyan pressed her lips together. Ever since she learned of the secret mission, she wanted to stay by his side and not be separated from him. If there was any danger, she was willing to bear it with him. But now, the big ice cube wanted to push her away from him. The big ice cube was like this. He was willing to silently bear everything by himself and never asked for the opinions of the people around him. This was really annoying. Mistress, do you still want to speak with eldest young master? Jin Xian's words came into the carriage. No need, just focus on driving, Chu Qingyan replied. Yes. Forget it, she would calm down first. When they got off the carriage, she would have a good talk with the big ice cube. She couldn't be separated like this for no reason. In the other carriage, Xiao Su had not read the letter in his hand for a long time. It was still on the page where Chu Qingyan had spoken. After a while, he didn't hear any movement behind him. He knocked on the wall of the carriage and Turin came close to the carriage. How is Qingyan? He asked casually. Little young master has stopped causing trouble. I think he has stopped. Turin was not surprised. His master still asked about the little princess movements. Fortunately, he had been paying attention. That's good. His ink-black hair hung down, covering his eyes. No one could see the emotions in his eyes. Was it complicated? Was it pain? Or was it reluctance? To Chu Qingyan's surprise, Big Ice Cube didn't get off the carriage even when it was lunchtime. Instead, he asked someone to send the food into the carriage. Chu Qingyan sat under the tree and stared at the carriage. If looks could kill, she would have burned the carriage to see what the people inside were doing. But because of this, she felt that Big Ice Cube's behavior was strange. Hua Ling and the others consciously distanced themselves from the young princess consort, because they were deeply afraid of the person who was fiercely poking at the rice in the bowl and full of resentment. They were afraid that the young princess would not bear to put the fire on their master, but would mercilessly fall on them. Therefore, it was better not to be implicated. Huang Yi replied in front of the carriage, Little young master didn't eat much today. He ate half a bowl less than usual. He didn't even look at his favorite Rujiamo. And maybe he will say he's hungry on the way. Prepare the pastries that he usually likes to eat in case he needs them. Xiao Su said calmly. Huang Yi was a bit surprised. Just now, the young princess consort tried to get close to the Lord, but the Lord had strictly forbidden it. But why did he call her over when the young princess consort wasn't paying attention and ask her about what she ate on the way? She suddenly didn't understand the world of her masters. This servant will remember. The carriage continued on its way. On the way, Chu Qingyan really used all kinds of tricks. She pretended to have a stomachache and not feeling well. Ethereal immediately came over to take her pulse and prescribe medicine. Her little trick was immediately seen through. She pretended to be bored and wanted to get off the carriage to walk around and admire the beautiful scenery on the road. But not long after this idea was conveyed, Mu Ling came over with a bunch of wooden toys, saying that it was her master's order to relieve her boredom. Therefore, when Chu Qingyan stared at the toys in the carriage, she couldn't help but admit that the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Although the big ice cube wasn't old, this skill was enough to throw her several streets away. It was just that he didn't show it normally, or rather, he never showed it to her. It seemed that pretending to cry wouldn't work. Later, she would definitely have Elvie bring a brocade handkerchief or something. Of course, it would be for her to wipe her tears. After one plan failed, another came up. But the people in front dealt with each move as they came up with it, while the people around them watched the show without feeling bored. Therefore, on the way, everyone suppressed their laughter as they listened to the young princess consort's carriage come up with all kinds of wicked ideas. Their lord calmly dealt with them, then the young princess consort's plan was broken and she rolled around in the carriage. Finally, she pulled herself together and the cycle repeated. Time passed little by little like this. Hualing, who had been scouting ahead, came back. Reporting to Master, there is a tea house 3 li ahead. After the tea house, it will be the wilderness. I'm afraid it won't be easy to find a place to rest. Should we rest first before continuing? All right, send out the order to get ready to rest. Xiao Su calmly said. Hualing accepted the order and left. When Chu Qingyan learned that they were going to get off the carriage to rest, she refused. Because on the way here, the big ice cube had successfully crushed the intelligence that she was so proud of. But in the end, she still got up and got off the carriage. After all, how could she let go of this opportunity to question the big ice cube without using a single soldier? When she got off the carriage, she saw the tall and handsome figure standing next to the carriage. Chu Qingyan felt a bit embarrassed and walked right past him. If the big ice cube called out to her, she would talk to him. Otherwise, this girl wouldn't take the initiative. But when she slowly walked far away, the big ice cube still did not speak. Chu Qingyan was instantly filled with anger. Unhumph, if you don't want to talk to me, then I'll also ignore you. I'll also be cold for once. Miss, do you want some tea? A waiter came forward to greet her. Anything is fine. Chu Qingyan was feeling irritated, so she casually replied. Then she found a place to sit down. She never thought that this place would be so remote, but there would be quite a few guests. A thought suddenly flashed in her mind, but she did not catch it. After a while, Xiao Su also appeared in the tea house, but Chu Qingyan had already turned her head to the side, acting like she didn't want to pay attention to him. Xiao Su revealed a smile and did not hesitate to sit down at her table. But the moment he sat down, a trace of vigilance flashed in his calm eyes. All right, Miss Young Master, your tea is here. The waiter quickly brought the tea over. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to pour herself a cup. She wanted to ignore the person in front of her, but when he sat down in front of her, the little temper that had just gathered dissipated. In the end, she also poured a cup of water for him. When she put down the teapot, Chu Qingyan suddenly thought of something. She immediately summoned Ethereal. Is there a problem with testing the water? It was better to be safe than sorry. But when Chu Qingyan said this, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly changed. Chapter 254. The sudden change in the atmosphere caused Chu Qingyan to slightly frown. At this time, Ethereal had heard the commotion and came over. He took out a silver needle and tested the water in the teacup. Picking it up to look, he shook his head at Chu Qingyan. There's no problem with the tea. Chu Qingyan nodded. When Ethereal's voice fell, Chu Qingyan clearly felt the atmosphere around them relax. Even though Ethereal said there was no poison, he could not guarantee that these people were fine. Big Ice Cube, let's go. Chu Qingyan reached out to cover the wrist of the person next to her and said in a voice only the two of them could hear. Xiao Su moved his gaze away from the little fellow's hand and turned to look at the guests and shopkeepers with flickering eyes. He nodded, let's go. When he stood up, the large men who had been peacefully drinking tea suddenly stood up. The weapons hidden under the table instantly lit up. The shopkeeper who had greeted them walked out while being surrounded by the crowd. The honest and sincere look from before had disappeared and was replaced with a treacherous smile. Don't think about leaving since you've come. Leave your life behind. There really is something wrong with you all. Chu Qingyan looked at the group of assassins and gritted her teeth. No wonder there was a tea house in the wilderness. There were not many people on the road, but there were so many passers-by gathered here. As expected, there was a demon when something was wrong. Little Princess Fei, it's too late for you to say this now. The waiter was carrying a large blade. Even though it did not match his small and thin figure, the large blade that weighed 100 caddies was like a toy in his hand. It did not look out of place when he played with it. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. This person actually knew that she was a woman dressed as a man. It could be seen that these people knew her identity very well. They were not here to rob her, but, "Who sent you here?" Hualing took a step forward and questioned. The shopkeeper sneered, "Don't you think it's unnecessary to ask this question?" After that, he turned to look at Xiao Su. "His Royal Highness, my master feels that it's too lonely underground and wants to invite you down for a chat. He hopes that you can fulfill his wish." "Your master is Lu Ying." Xiao Su's tone was calm, without the slightest hint of panic at being surrounded. It wasn't a question, it was an affirmation. The shop owner was shocked at first, but he soon revealed a malicious look. "His Royal Highness is indeed smart to be able to guess where we came from at a glance. Unfortunately, it's useless even if he guessed it, because you'll soon be in hell. Brothers, let's go and avenge our master." Saber light and sword shadows suddenly closed in. And at this time, Turin led the black-clothed guards to descend from the sky, protecting his master and the little princess. Meanwhile, Hualing's people flanked them from the outside, coordinating from the inside and the outside. An encirclement began. "Boss, we've been tricked." The waiter suddenly woke up when he saw the group of black-clothed guards killing mercilessly. Weren't there only a dozen people? How come there are so many people all of a sudden? The shopkeeper watched in disbelief as his men fell down one by one. He looked at the person who was still standing in place. His body was cold, like a god, looking down at them, ants and mortals. Only now did he suddenly remember that this person was the world's famous war god. How could he have so many people by his side? But he was unwilling to accept this. "Charge!" The shop owner raised his sword and charged at Xiao Su, but a person quickly appeared in front of him and mercilessly slashed at him. After a few rounds, the shop owner was already covered in wounds. The fierce blade cavalry is indeed worthy of their reputation. The moment the shop owner fell, he hatefully said, "In less than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, the dozens of men from before were either dead or injured. All of them were lying on the ground. Speak, do you have any other accomplices?" Hualing raised his sword and questioned the waiter. The waiter looked at him weakly. "You want to know? In your dreams." With that said, Hualing cried out in alarm. He wanted to stop him, but the other party was already a step ahead of him. He bled from his 7 orifices and died. The moment the waiter committed suicide, he heard the voices of the other guards. "Master Hualing, these people have all committed suicide." Ethereal went forward to check and finally stood up. "There is poison hidden in their teeth. Once they fail the mission, they will bite through the poison and commit suicide." When Chu Qingyan heard this, the hand covering her eyes moved away. At the beginning of the fight, in order to prevent her from seeing the bloody scene, Big Ice Cube had blindfolded her eyes without any explanation. It was only now that everything was over that he let go. The corpses in front of her were scattered all over the place. She found that many of them had been killed with a single slash, so there was no bloody scene. It was enough to see that the fierce blade cavalry was as powerful as the rumors said. They were fast, accurate, and ruthless. "Master, not a single one is alive." Mars reported with some self-blame. "These are all death soldiers. There is no use in leaving them alive." Xiao Su swept his eyes over the people on the ground, cleaned them up and continued moving forward. Hualing immediately ordered his subordinates to clean up the scene. "Big Ice Cube, did you already expect this? Is that why you had Turin and the others hide their tracks and set up an ambush in secret?" On the way back to the carriage, she suddenly remembered that Turin and the others had disappeared before arriving at the tea house. When she combined it with the scene of Turin and the others appearing when they were surrounded, she had a guess. This place is remote. Normal shops will not choose this kind of place to make a living. Xiao Su didn't want to explain so much, but when he thought of the teachings in the Book of Parenting, he said a few more words. "When we entered the shop, those men of sacrifice who pretended to be customers didn't hide their murderous aura. Moreover, the tables, chairs, and tea sets were all brand new. It was obvious that this was a newly opened tea house. All these signs indicated that this was just a trap. It was similar to what she had guessed. Then how do you know that they are death soldiers trained by Luing? This was the question she did not understand the most. Of the officials that were dealt with on the way north, only Luing was beheaded a few days ago. The other officials have not been executed yet. Xiao Su replied. Chu Qingyan thought of what the shop owner had said. He had said that his master was waiting in hell, and she suddenly realized. The big ice cube was too smart. He could guess the other person's identity with just a few words. He could not be any more powerful. Only, the person walking in front of her suddenly stopped. What is it? Chu Qingyan was a little confused. She saw Xiao Su standing with his back to her for a while before slowly turning around. There was a serious look in his eyes. Chu Qingyan suddenly had a bad feeling. Qingyan, this king has something to say to you. There was a trace of pity in his cold voice that no one could detect. I won't listen, I won't listen. Chu Qingyan immediately covered her ears. It's getting late, we should be on our way. She had just taken a step when her arm was firmly grabbed. Her eyes heated up, and she felt a strong bitterness in her mouth and tongue. Chapter 255. She wanted to walk forward, but she was held tightly by him. The winter wind was very cold. As long as a little bit of skin was exposed, it would be tortured by the wind until the veins in the skin were about to crack. However, at this moment, Chu Qingyan could only feel the fingers that were holding her wrist tightly against her sleeves. That scorching temperature seemed to penetrate through her thick clothes and stick to her skin. One hand was cold while the other was hot. Only then did she know what it felt like to have ice and fire at the same time. Right at this time. Qingyan, this king will let Hualing arrange for people to let you go to Fuli mountain range first. We will be there soon. The voice was as cold as ice. To Chu Qingyan, it was even colder than the cold wind of late winter. She covered her ears with her hands, not daring to let go. She was like an ostrich hiding in her own world. Xiao Su looked at the delicate figure with her back facing him. Even though his heart was filled with reluctance, he could not be soft-hearted at this time. Qingyan, I know you are listening. The clear voice, accompanied by the cold wind, rang out. I also know that you are a smart child. The assassination just now was not the first time, and will not be the last. Maybe you feel that with Xiaolai riding, those enemies are not a problem. But on this road, we will meet more and more opponents, and more difficult to deal with. So I must let you reach a safe place first. Chu Qingyan knew that she could not hide it anymore. She suddenly turned around and hugged the person behind her. Her eyes were red like the sunset. But I don't want to leave you. We said before that we will taste the sweetness and bear the pain together. How can you let me leave? You said that you will not leave me alone again. You can't go back on your words. And I'm not a coward. I am not afraid. The sudden hug, the unexpected dependence, was like a stone that suddenly crashed into his heart, fiercely landing on the lake in his heart. The floating water droplets drenched him, making him instantly lose the ability to speak. But when all the shock faded away, what remained in his heart was a firm determination. I know you're not a coward. I didn't say that I'm going to abandon you. I just want you to wait for us at the Fuli mountain range. Now that the enemy is in the dark and we're in the light, we'll have to protect you when the enemy attacks. You should know that once you're on the battlefield, you have to be completely focused. A little distraction is a fatal weakness. Chu Qingyan clutched the clothes in her hands. The soft fabric in her hands was like thorns deeply piercing her fingertips. The pain in her fingertips was connected to her heart. She felt a dense pain in her heart as if it was being pierced by needles. The person in his arms remained silent. He knew that this was her silent resistance. If you leave, we can focus on the unfavorable situation. As long as we get rid of these people, I promise you that we'll meet up with you as soon as possible. Xiao Su lowered his eyebrows. An indescribable emotion surfaced in his eyes. But Chu Qingyan was buried in his arms, and did not notice the slight pain on his face. Really? She was not someone who would throw a tantrum. The situation was unclear, and they were in a passive position. She knew that. And she remembered that Higashio Motetsu had said that Big Ice Cube had formed many enmity with the officials. If these people were to make a move, then it would be extremely disadvantageous for Big Ice Cube. No matter how brave and skilled Xiao cavalry were, they would not be able to withstand such an assassination. If they had to protect them, then they would not be able to do anything. So, she did not want to affect Big Ice Cube's decision because of her. After all, with them around, their movements would be greatly restricted. Really? Xiao Su stretched out his hand to stroke her long hair. The soft black hair slid down his hand, as if it was the past that he could no longer grasp, as well as the future. All right, then I promise you. Chu Qingyan closed her eyes and said softly. 2 lines of tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. They were hidden in the thick clothes and no one noticed. And the people who were silently watching this scene all moved their gazes away. They could not bear to watch anymore. They felt that this year's winter was so cold. Big Ice Cube, I have already asked people to recount the dry rations that we prepared. It is enough to last us for 3 days. After tidying up, Chu Qingyan walked in front of him and tried to make her tone more cheerful. Xiao Su nodded. Hua Ling will escort you there. If you need anything along the way, just tell him to do it. Chu Qingyan looked at Hua Ling, who was leading the horse in front, and then turned to look at him. She slightly frowned. Big Ice Cube, Hua Ling and Turin are your left and right arms. I will be more assured with them by your side, so you can leave Hua Ling here. Moreover, I think that he also wants to stay by your side. Xiao Su did not waver in his decision. No need. I have already sent orders to the generals stationed around here. Calculating the time, they should be here soon, so you don't need to worry about the people by my side. Also, you have Hua Ling by your side, so I am assured. Chu Qingyan thought that this was also good. The carriage and the people were already prepared. Chu Qingyan took 2 steps and her heart felt bitter. She could not take another step, so she turned and ran back to him. Is there anything else? Xiao Su saw her rush back and thought that she had left something behind. Big Ice Cube, I have a few words I want to say to you. She looked up. Behind her was a bleak forest with dead branches and rotten leaves. Only her eyes were bright, as if they lit up the dark forest. All right, he replied. The first sentence is, you have to take good care of yourself. You're not allowed to skip meals and rest. She was afraid that when she was not here, no one would supervise him and no one would dare to disobey him. If he did not care about his body, then no one would be able to do anything. The second sentence is, you're not allowed to be injured. I want you to appear in front of me without any injuries. She could imagine how hard the road ahead would be. There were so many tigers, wolves, jackals, and leopards eyeing him with ruthless swords. She was afraid that he would be injured and bleed, even though his injuries had not healed yet. The third sentence is, you're not allowed to go back on your words. After you finish everything, you have to come to Fuli Mountain to pick me up. She was even more afraid that she would not be able to wait for his arrival in that cold mountain range. Xiao Su's eyes moved. He slowly raised his hands, which were hanging by his sides, and pressed the red-eyed little girl in front of him into his chest. They had never parted before. He could not bear to let go. I also have a few words to say to you. All right. No matter what happens, don't look back. When I'm not here, protect yourself. Be good and stay in Fuli Mountain. Wait for us to come back. A clear and cold voice sounded in her ears. Chu Qingyan bit her lips and nodded gently in his arms. She answered 3 times in a row. At this moment, the whole world seemed to be quiet. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.